Romanian Eagle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Raid 2. The next missions to raid the 3 class posts went smoothly, except that an Austro-Hungarian soldier almost shouted out when they raided the second post. So far they have completed the mission according to the scheduled time. The next challenge for them was even more difficult, because they had come to Austria-Hungary's forward station in the Diller Valley Point. There are also 2 soldiers on guard here. There is a bunker 200 meters ahead, and there should be 2 to 4 soldiers. I didn't expect that. There are nearly 30 sentries set up in this station, and there are 3 bunkers. The commander of this station is really cautious. After observing the Austro-Hungarian frontier station, Major Vasily, the commander, couldn't help but speak in surprise. Hearing the words of Major Vasily, Captain Mizik asked with a little worry about the mission. Can this still be a silent raid? Hearing Captain Mizik's worry, Major Vasily's team members all smirked silently. Still unable to watch as the major's deputy, he whispered to Mizik, "This is not a problem. We have done tasks that are much more difficult than this. It is nothing." After hearing the muttering of his deputy, Vasily lowered his voice and warned, "Be careful and don't be careless. I don't want to go back with your corpses. And this mission is extraordinary. Don't screw it up for me, or I'll make you regret being born in this world." It was obvious that the words of Your Excellency the Major had an effect, and everyone was quiet. From their serious expressions, it could be seen that they all listened to the Major's words. Seeing the expressions of his team members, Vasily felt satisfied. The success of the raids came from rigorous arrangements, precise plans, and serious combat attitudes. Now he can assign tasks to his players. Vasily began to assign tasks. "Miller, take your men to the east and use the terrain as cover." Miller, who was named, replied in a low voice, "Okay, Major Doss, your mission is to the west. There are more trees there, so I don't need to teach you. Of course, Major Bato, you are the farthest. You need to detour to the north. You can walk with Doss and use the trees as shelter, no problem, Major." After assigning the task, Vasily revealed the watch in his hand. "Let's check the time now. It's 1 AM, and at 1:15 we start to clear the outposts and bunker. At 1:45 we start to touch the inside of the garrison. In principle, no sound can be detected, and guns can be used. However, taking into account the situation, as soon as you hear the sound of gunfire, you should make a quick raid. We also need to take down the tunnel a kilometer behind the camp, so be quick." "Okay. Clear. No problem." Seeing Vasily assigning tasks to his subordinates, Mizik asked anxiously, "Then what about my people?" Seeing Mizik's urgency for not giving them credit, Vasily told him truthfully, "Don't worry, of course I won't forget you. This time I need to distribute your people to me." "Okay." Of course Mizik, who knew how much his team members weighed, would not refuse. Through the sneak attacks on several outposts along the way, Mizik can fully see the gap. And if it weren't for the need for friendly troops who are familiar with the local environment, he would not have been selected to cooperate in the battle. So this time Mizik fully intends to follow Vasily's arrangement. Everything is for the mission. Soon their commando team was secretly dispersed, and of course Mizik was with Vasily. Immediately after the hands of the watch pointed to 1:15, Vasily took his men to the outer sentry, and Mizik followed. Seeing Mizik's actions, Vasily didn't scold or ask, just like he didn't exist. After killing several soldiers at the sentry, Vasily stopped in front of the dungeon, and he quietly turned to Mizik. "I need 4 people in the front of the fortress, and now I only have 3 people who can use it. Can you join?" Mizik glanced at the 3 commandos who had no blood on their clothes, and nodded in agreement. He knew that this was to prevent being smelled of blood, because the temperature of the dungeon was much higher, so he could not touch the whistle of the dungeon wearing clothes with blood stains. "Come on." With the order of Vasily, the 4 people, including Mizik, crawl forward silently with their hands and feet, and it took them 4 minutes for a short distance of 200 meters. As the 4 touched the door of the dark fort, one of them pointed to himself, and then to the left of the door of the dark fort. Then he pointed to the others, and then pointed to the door of the dark fort from left to right. Mizik knew the sign language. It was saying that he would deal with the one on the far left, and the others would deal with the other enemies in the order of priority he had indicated. Because the commandos specially taught them for the convenience of communication point. After seeing everyone nodding, the leader made a gesture of action, and then the four suddenly rushed in. The sound of the door opening made the Austro-Hungarian soldiers in the dark fort turn their heads to look over, but at this time they only saw four vigorous figures suddenly pounce on them, which made the Austro-Hungarian soldiers pause for a while. When they realized that they were going to shout and remind them, but faster than they were, a palm covered their mouths, and then a dagger stabbed them in the abdomen. The Austro-Hungarian soldiers who were stabbed in the abdomen and liver lost their strength at once, and the strength of their struggle and resistance became much less. Then the dagger was aimed at their hearts, and the Austro-Hungarian soldiers were declared dead after 10 seconds. Fortunately, I called you together, otherwise the raid on this dark fort will be exposed. I didn't expect you to be good. My name is Rom, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Captain Mizik. The commandos who had been commanding at the gate before attacked and killed the four Austro-Hungarian soldiers in the bunker and extended a hand of friendship to Mizik. It's nothing. It's far worse than you are. When Mizik communicated with the Roma commando, Vasily also rushed over with other personnel. Now that the perimeter of the Austro-Hungarian army's forward position has been completely cleaned, the next step is to carry out an assassination raid inside the camp. It's 1:45 now. Come on. Vasily looked at the time and made a gesture of attack. So under the leadership of the commandos, Mizik entered the Austro-Hungarian army station with his soldiers. This room is for ammunition. Be careful. Someone is coming, and looking at the posture, he is going to the toilet, and he is going to ambush him. There are a row of people in the 3 rooms here. You lead someone to solve them quietly. Be careful. There is a barn in front of you. Don't disturb the livestock and attract the attention of the enemy. Under the guidance of the commandos brought by Vasily, Mizik found that his soldiers were completely on an outing. All kinds of exploration are done by commandos. And if there is an emergency, the commandos will give orders. As long as you follow their orders carefully, there is no risk. Captain Learwater suddenly woke up from a nightmare, a long-standing nightmare for a veteran Austro-Hungarian officer who fought on the Russian front for several years. He remembered that the last nightmare was caused by the Brusilov offensive last year, so what about this time? Feeling clueless, Captain Learwater put on his clothes and pondered in the room where he lived alone, thinking that the nightmare was a reminder of what he meant. I have arranged a strict guard post, and even flies can't sneak in. So what does it mean when I suddenly have a nightmare? Captain Learwater, who was completely clueless, planned to stop thinking about this issue. He planned to check the post to see if the soldiers under him were lazy. Although he knew that this was unlikely, in order to maintain the vigilance of the army, he still had to make an inspection. After getting dressed, he opened the door, and the cold wind suddenly poured in, which made his mind a lot clearer. After stepping out of the room, Captain Learwater felt himself being slapped by something, and fell suddenly to the ground. He was about to get up, when a dark shadow suddenly pressed him down, and then a huge pain took away a lot of his struggling strength. It was being stabbed with a sharp blade, and at that moment Captain Learwater knew that he had been assassinated, and he was about to shout for the soldiers to rescue him. However, a hand tightly covered his mouth, preventing him from shouting. Captain Learwater felt that he was getting weaker and weaker, and his eyelids were getting heavier and heavier. When his vision was about to blur, he realized with the help of the moonlight that he was actually his orderly, but the dull eyes told him his own orderly was dead. Is he going to die? And then Captain Learwater feels that he doesn't know anything in the dark. Vasily and their raid were a great success. Neither of the two even ran away with more than 200 people. All of them were assassinated in the camp. Then Mizik took his men to guard the station, and Vasily took his assault. The team captured the railway tunnel in the Carpathian Mountains to ensure the smooth progress of the raid of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard. With the arrival of 4 o'clock in the morning, trains full of soldiers from the 1st Guard Division passed by, and the Romanian raid officially began. That's right, the use of trains to carry soldiers while the enemy is not ready for a surprise attack. This is a crazy plan that made the Romanian Chief of General Staff Prezhan unforgettable. The crazy thing about this plan is that as long as the enemy is prepared, the attacking troops will be doomed. But if the raid is successful, the first wave of Austro-Hungarian troops in Transylvania will also suffer heavy casualties, which is the charm of this plan. To put it simply, this is a crazy battle plan, that you die or I die, and now it seems that this plan is very likely to succeed. But for now, for Vasily and Mizik, who had raided earlier, their mission was complete. After writing, go to bed, and have it at night. Chapter 302 Raid 3. On the day of the month, all Romanian newspapers reported the news of the kingdom's declaration of war with Austria-Hungary. Romania has only submitted a declaration of war to Austria-Hungary at present. Then there was a big report in the newspapers about the humiliation of the Romanians in Transylvania by the Hungarians. The postman and the police sent out the army's call-up list, and the streets became sullen. Petrosini has been taken. In the general staff, a staff officer who had just received the latest information pushed open the door and announced the latest good news to the staff officers waiting in the hall. The words of the reporting staff made the officers waiting in the hall quiet for a while, and then there was a burst of enthusiastic cheers. Then they began to discuss its current situation, and among them there were officers who seemed to be high-ranking military officials, and began to point out the military layout of Romania. Really, this is great. We are completely over the barrier of the Carpathians, and we are not at a disadvantage in the terrain. This is really good news. In addition, the North Army has won the Kraken and Prots Pass, and our two major armies, North and South, have already got off to a good start. That's true. At present, there is no news about the Central Army. Will there be any accidents? This is impossible. After both the North and the South have made a breakthrough, the enemy is not a fool. It is definitely impossible to increase the troops in Brasov. Then the pressure on the Central Army will be much less. This will definitely allow it to achieve a breakthrough. We only just be patient. The information that the staff officers can get, as the chief of the general staff, Ploiesti, of course, must be known before them, and the detailed battle report must be sent to him first. But Ploiesti is not alone in his office today. Your Majesty, the 1st Division of the Guard has already taken Petrosini. Petrosini was taken in less than a day. Lieutenant General Ankada is still the one who dares to fight. His Majesty, Ploiesti, revealed who was coming, and yes, he personally came to the general staff to wait for the first-hand good news. And Lieutenant General Ankada in the Piri Pass was the commander of the 5th Division, Major General Ankada, who had outstanding performance in the Battle of Tarnovo in the Second Balkan War, although not as good as the Director of Education, Lieutenant General Friet, who served as the commander of Army Group North in this battle, but his replacement for Lieutenant General Blongat, who retired due to his advanced age, can also show his ability. As the division commander of Romania is one of the 3 main elite divisions, Lieutenant General Ankada can be regarded as a high-ranking military leader, and the 3 major military giants will not be without opportunities in the future. Did the follow-up troops follow? Facing the good news of Ploiesti's announcement, Edel is more concerned about the action behind. Because no other troops were mobilized in the plan to keep secrets, Edel was a little worried about being pushed back by Austria-Hungary. However, of course he will not forget Lieutenant General Ankada who successfully raided Petrosini, but now is not the time for commendation, at least until Transylvania is completely won. Knowing the king's heart, Ploiesti immediately said the news he wanted to get. His Majesty's 9th Division has already had a brigade reinforced, and the remaining troops will arrive in Petrosini tomorrow morning. Now the other troops of the Southern Army have been assembled, and can move in the direction of Diva. Hearing the words of Admiral Prezhan, Edel was also relieved. In this battle against Transylvania, anyone with a little military common sense would know the role of the Southern Army in this battle. As long as Diva can be won, then Romania will have the upper hand in this battle. Because this is the role of railways in the military in this era, it cannot be overstated. Who let Diva have a railway connecting Romania and Austria-Hungary, then its important position cannot be overemphasized. Just as Edel and Prezhan were chatting about the South Army, there was a knock on the door coming. Ploiesti knew that there must be something important to knock on the door at this time, and sure enough, his secretary came in and reported good news to him and the king. Your Majesty, Admiral, the Central Army just sent a telegram that they captured the Radar Yar Pass. This is the detailed telegram they sent. The secretary was really sensible. He knew what the two big men in this room were most concerned about and immediately handed over the telegram. And through the rapid ups and downs of his chest, the steam on his head, can tell that he rushed over as soon as he got the news. "Thanks for your hard work." Admiral Pleasant thanked him and took the telegram. This sentence made the secretary feel that everything was worth it, and then he replied respectfully, "It's not hard at all." After saying that, he walked out of the room. Ploiesti opened the battle report and read it. He briefly glanced at it and said to Edel, who was waiting for the news, "Your Majesty, the Central Army had a little accident before, but it's healed now. The process is all written in this telegram, Your Majesty. Please read it." Edel took the telegram and read it, on which Army Group Center explained why it was so late. It turned out that the failure of their sneak attack alerted the defenders of the Radar Mountain Pass, and then they could only let the 8th Division Brigade, which is the Arrow Force, attack. But fortunately, the storm went smoothly, and the Austro-Hungarian reinforcement in Brasov captured this pass before the arrival of the Austro-Hungarian reinforcement in Brasov. Now the 8th Division Brigade is resisting the Austro-Hungarian 23rd Division, which is one step behind, at this pass. In addition, the Central Army also mentioned in the telegram that the other troops of the 8th Division are already 20 kilometers away from the radar pass and will arrive at the pass tonight to ensure that they will not be recaptured by the Austro-Hungarian Army. Seeing the success of the initial raid, Edel couldn't help asking, "It seems that the Central Army is also going well, so should our next battle plan be launched immediately?" Seeing that the king was full of expectations, Admiral Puri had to give up his thoughts. "Your Majesty, we can't do it yet. It takes time to assemble the troops, and it takes time to transport weapons and ammunition. And we only issued a general mobilization today, which takes time." Prezhan rejected his proposal, and Edel was not angry. "Okay, I'm in a hurry." Edel still has military common sense and knows that even though the Romanian raid is going smoothly now, it is all built on the standing army that has been trained daily for more than 10 years. And he will be fighting for Transylvania soon. He also knows that the standing army of 400,000 may not be able to beat the millions of Austro-Hungarian army, not to mention the Bulgarian army and the world's #1 German army, all of which require general mobilization. Well, Edel can only wait now. Chapter 303 Battle of Transylvania 1. The news of Romania's declaration of war on Austria-Hungary spread to all the high-level leaders of Austria-Hungary 2 hours after it submitted the declaration, and spread throughout Europe that night. On the Allied side, Britain and France trumpeted the continuation of Romania's participation in the war to defend civilized society on the second day, and even the Times newspaper, known for its impartiality and rigor, sang Romania's praises. He praised Romania's social harmony, economic prosperity, and enthusiasm of the people. For a time, Romania seemed to be a beacon of European social civilization. For the Allies, especially the Kaiser, this news made him smash his 2 most beloved crystal cups. And Eda's brother-in-law, Carl was furious in the palace. There were guards that Carl linked the Romanian king Eda with bad words such as bitches and prostitutes that night. It's hard to believe that being a monarch would say such a thing. And later that day, Carl summoned his military officials at the palace to discuss Romania's response to the declaration of war with Austria-Hungary. The unanimous result of everyone's deliberation was to let the Austro-Hungarian army already in Transylvania immediately set up defenses and step up the mobilization of the Russian team back in order to prevent the distant water from quenching the thirst of the near. At the same time, the 9th Army, 20,000 people, which is currently still repairing in Budapest, immediately stops the repairing state and replenishes weapons and ammunition and transfers it to Transylvania. In addition to military preparations, Austria-Hungary decided to impose martial law in Transylvania in order to prevent the local Romanians from becoming the leading party. Ethnic Romanian gatherings cannot exceed 5 people, and the government will confiscate their weapons in the name of law and order. One more thing needs to be said here. Because of dissatisfaction with the previous Austro-Hungarian army's inclination to Germany, and in order to eliminate Germany's influence in Austria-Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Emperor Carol I personally served as the chief of the Austro-Hungarian General Staff. In Europe, the monarch's position as chief of staff can be regarded as a pioneering work, and Austria-Hungary is at the forefront of the world. However, the results of the discussions between Austria-Hungary and you that night were overturned the next day. Damn it, isn't your military doing anything serious? Let's see your judgment. Romania still needs at least 3 months to prepare. As a result, we received a declaration of war a month later. Yesterday you told me Transylvania is fortified, but now the main gates are in the hands of the Romanians, and their steady stream of soldiers have set foot on Austria-Hungary. Archduke Friedrich, can you give me an explanation? Inside the palace, Carolai was furious. After getting the news of Romania's raid on the night of the declaration of war, Carolai was in a bad mood. He feels that he has been fooled by his brother-in-law Edel, which Cal cannot accept. He also served as the chief of the general staff, and actually held the military power, but he could not scold himself, so the Grand Duke Friedrich, the field marshal who had a good temper, and did not abuse his power, became his punching bag. And Archduke Friedrich, who was scolded by him, remained silent. As the nephew of Archduke Albrecht, the last famous marshal of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Friedrich admired his uncle since he was a child, and after the death of Archduke Albrecht, trusted by Emperor Franz Joseph at the outbreak of World War I, he was appointed commander-in-chief of the Austro-Hungarian army, and on the 8th of February he was promoted to field marshal. He's basically a titular supreme commander. He is clever and does not interfere in the specific affairs of the army. The actual power of the army is in the hands of Conrad, the chief of the general staff. It was not until February this year that Carolai actually took control of the military. Your Majesty, it seems that we have made a mistake in judgment at present, but we will make up for this error soon. We will speed up the speed of drawing troops from the newly acquired lords, and will also transfer the troops that are still being repaired at home to Transylvania. Archduke Friedrich wisely gave steps when facing the wrath of Carolai, which is one of the reasons why he can gain the trust of the Habsburg family. However, Archduke Friedrich's words made Carlai's frown. Will this affect the Italian side's preparations? In the face of the emperor's inquiry, Archduke Friedrich knew that the emperor was referring to the fear of affecting the Italian front, so he said it again and again after careful consideration. There will be some impact. Hearing that it would affect the Italian battlefield, Carlai, who was no longer dazzled by his anger, thought about it, then minimized that impact. What made the two Austro-Hungarian high-level executives care so much about the Italian battlefield was caused by the butterfly of Edda. Because Russia pulled out of the war early, Austria-Hungary and Germany had more time to move their troops away from the already calm Eastern Front. And Vienna did not have many other options on how to use these forces. Looking around, only Italy, an opponent, was worthy of the Austro-Hungarian army. So in September, the Austro-Hungarian military began to prepare an offensive against Italy. The anti-bone boy intended to attack with troops mobilized from the Eastern Front in order to be able to drive Italy out of the war. So, even if Romania has declared war on Austria-Hungary, in Carol's view, defeating Italy can give the Austro-Hungarian Empire a temporary respite. Therefore, he was extremely reluctant to use his precious troops wantonly on the Romanian front line, allowing the Italian army, which was repeatedly defeated by Austria-Hungary, to gain a respite. But will this make Romania arrogant, and it may cause the local Romanian people to have unwanted thoughts in the face of the worries of Archduke Friedrich? Carolai pointedly said, "We are under attack. Do we need help from our allies? And now that there is no war on the Eastern Front, it does not matter if we ask Berlin for help." Hearing the emperor's words made Archduke Friedrich feel that his majesty has changed a lot recently. It must be known that when he succeeded to the throne last year, the emperor was dissatisfied with Germany's meddling with Austria-Hungary. It is necessary to ensure the power of the Habsburgs in the army, and it is not like the German army to ask for help unless it is a last resort. We haven't played a game yet, so we should call reinforcement first. This is of course also related to the experience of Carolai. At first, the new emperor thought he would be able to withdraw from the war, which cost Austria-Hungary a lot of casualties, with a single peace agreement. But Britain and France categorically rejected Carol's hope for peace talks, so the young Austro-Hungarian emperor knew that Britain and France would not let Austria-Hungary go. Of course, as the Habsburg family of its royal family, the Allies could not let it go. So now he is fighting to protect the family and the country. There is no peace talks, either win or lose the war, and now he has no choice. In the afternoon of the same day, a telegram for assistance from Austria-Hungary was sent to Berlin. This time, Austria-Hungary asked for reinforcement in a very loud voice, and directly asked for 200,000 reinforcement. A message was sent along with a request for Germany to fulfill its alliance obligations and declare war on Romania. Soon, because of these two cables, the Kaiser convened a meeting of government officials and the military to discuss. After everyone had read the two telegrams, William II asked, "On the issue of declaring war on Romania, do you have any other opinions?" Everyone present had no opinion, because of their fancy to Austria-Hungary and the betrayal of Romania. The Kaiser thought this was betrayal. No one would disagree with the declaration of war. The reason why the war was not declared at the first time was because there are a lot of things that are not over yet. Seeing that the simplest telegram had been perfectly resolved, Wilhelm II asked again, "And what about Austria-Hungary's request for reinforcement?" As soon as the Kaiser's voice fell, Ludendorff, the quartermaster chief, spoke up. "Your Majesty, now we need to prepare for the offensive on the Western Front next year. We really can't draw many troops to help the Austrians. At most, we can draw about 30,000 people from 2 divisions." In order to make Ludendorff react to such a big reaction, in addition to preparing for a new offensive against France after the new year, Austria-Hungary's various small actions are also one of the factors. Now that the Austro-Hungarian army has not officially fought, let him send reinforcement. Isn't this to disgust him? However, Ludendorff's words aroused opposition from the government, especially when Foreign Minister Zorf spoke up when Ludendorff's words just fell. "Your Excellency, I don't agree with your view. Austria-Hungary is an ally, and when facing Romanian attack, we can't help but help it. And we also helped Austria-Hungary before. The number of 30,000 troops is too small. It would be better not to send reinforcement. It's really better not to send that. Okay, stop arguing. Seeing that Ludendorff was going to stand up against Zorf, the Kaiser stood up at this time. He looked at Hindenburg and spoke. "Chief of the General Staff, you said how many troops should be sent to reinforce Austria-Hungary." Hindenburg, who was named by the Kaiser, had a new idea. "It now seems that a sufficient number of reinforcement need to be sent to help Austria-Hungary attack Romania. But I don't think it has to be sent to Austria-Hungary to help them. Marshal, please tell me if you have any ideas." Hindenburg became clearer about his ideas. He said, "We can flank Romania from the Ukrainian side and achieve a move to contain the Romanian army. Will this make Austria-Hungary dissatisfied with us?" Facing the question, Hindenburg explained, "No, Austria-Hungary asked for reinforcement to relieve the pressure on their troops. They don't seem to want to delay the preparations for Italy, so we can do it this way. We can completely find away from the troops currently stationed on the Eastern Front, without delaying our war plan on the Western Front at all." At this time Prime Minister Hedling sounded another worry. Will this cause the Soviet government to backtrack? Faced with the Prime Minister's inquiry, Hindenburg explained, "That's not at all. People like the Soviet Russian regime don't dare to turn against us now. They will abide by the terms they signed, because there are too many opponents in Russia." In the end, after negotiation, Germany replied to Austria-Hungary that they would send 240,000 troops under the command of Mackensen, the commander of the Eastern Front, to flank Moldova in Romania to contain its troops and cooperate with the Austrian-Hungarian armies. Plan to capture Romania. Although the plan was quite good, it required 20 days to prepare because the scattered German forces needed to regroup and replenish their ammunition. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304 Battle of Transylvania 2. In the current situation, that Germany and Bulgaria are unable to send reinforcement for a short period of time, Austria-Hungary can only face the Romanian offensive alone. However, the good news for Austria-Hungary is that Romania's general mobilization has only begun, and they still have time to mobilize reinforcement to remedy the situation. For the Austro-Hungarian army in Transylvania, the most important thing now is to block the offensive of the Romanian army, especially Deva, which has railway traffic with Romania. Point of course, the Austro-Hungarian defenders currently stationed in Deva will not sit idly by in the face of the Romanian offensive. The 17th Hungarian Division of the Austro-Hungarian Army, stationed in Deva, was mobilized at the time of the raid on Petrosini, and the first reinforcement were dispatched an hour later. The 10th Army headquarters located in the capital Cluj, which administers the area, in order to prepare for the establishment of Romania in July 2017. Commanded by Lieutenant General Sam Hazar, also immediately dispatched reinforcement of 2 divisions to Deva. The reaction of the Austro-Hungarian army was not unpleasant, but for the 35th Division of the Austro-Hungarian army, which was raided, it still failed to wait for reinforcement. The 35th Division was driven out of Petrosini when the leading force of the 17th Division was 10 kilometers away from Petrosini. The 35th was defeated in less than a day. This result made the 17th Division commander, Major General Stepan, terrified. Therefore, after receiving the retreating 35th Division, the 17th Division, for the sake of prudence, chose to set up defenses in Hasej, 20 kilometers away from Petrosini, and wait for reinforcement. The decision of Division Commander Stepan brought a sigh of relief to Lieutenant General Ankada, the commander of the Romanian Guard 1st Division, who had just captured Petrosini. Because it was a raid, the 1st Imperial Guard Division did not carry too much ammunition, and during the raid, in order to ensure the success rate of the capture, the 1st Imperial Guard Division increased the use of firepower density. So after the Austro-Hungarian army was driven out of Petrosini, there was not much ammunition left. Fortunately, the previous performance of the 1st Guard Division scared the opponent. Fortunately, the 1st Division of the Guard was replenished with ammunition that night, and the next day reinforcement from the 19th Division No. 6 also arrived in Petrosini, and its division commander, Major General Dotrad, arrived with the 1st Army. After passing through the streets where the smell of gunpowder has not yet been extinguished, Major General Dotrad came to the headquarters of the 1st Guard Division in a small manor in Petrosini. Your 19th Division has arrived, and we don't have to worry about the counterattack of the Austro-Hungarian army. At the entrance of the manor, Lieutenant General Ankeda, the commander of the 1st Division of the Guard, warmly greeted Major General Dotrad. It's still the 1st Division of your guards. That is very powerful. It only took half a day to defeat a division. This kind of combat power is an example that we should learn from. The 2 division commanders caught each other and bragged, but Major General Dotrad was just because of Lieutenant General Ankada's enthusiasm. Although he couldn't see why Lieutenant General would be so enthusiastic about him, who wouldn't say nice things. Woolen cloth. And Lieutenant General Ankada did have other reasons. Soon the 2 division commanders walked into the headquarters with their respective officers. After dispersing their respective officers, Lieutenant General Ankada really stated his purpose. Major General Dotrad, do you want to do something big? Lieutenant General Ankada, straight to the point. Words moved Major General Dotrad's heart. What's the plan, Lieutenant? General Ankada walked to the combat map and pointed to the location of Hardseg. The enemy in front of us is the 17th and 35th Divisions of Austria-Hungary, of which the 35th Division suffered very few casualties. Austria-Hungary still has an infantry regiment in Deva. According to the information, the enemy transferred 2 divisions from Cluj, but it will take 3 days to reach Deva. Taking advantage of Lieutenant General Ankada's sigh of relief, Major General Dotrad interjected. You want to take advantage of these 3 days to defeat the Austro-Hungarian army in Hardseg and capture Deva before the enemy reinforcement arrive. Major General Dotrad said what was in his heart, and Lieutenant General Ankada said in surprise, yes, the purpose of the first stage of our southern army is to take Deva. If we wait until the army gathers, we can win the target, but we can't show the advantage. So this is a fight especially prepared for us. We will regret it if we give up. Major General Dotrad couldn't help but speak from Lieutenant General Ankada's words. but there are only 3 days, which is too demanding for us, so this battle is not easy to fight at all. Hearing that Major General Dottred had scruples about the 3-day period, Lieutenant General Ankada continued to explain. This plan is a bit risky, but high risk brings high reward. As long as we can win Diva alone, we will be the best in this battle. The words of Lieutenant General Ankadal made Major General Dottred couldn't help but think. I want to think about it. Major General Dottred hesitated, which made Lieutenant General Ankadal say anxiously. The opportunity is fleeting. You have to hurry. Major General Dottred knew that, if the information was correct, this was indeed an opportunity for the two of them. He and the 2 divisions of Lieutenant General Ankada faced the 2 divisions of Austria-Hungary, and he was still very confident. And this is a temporary fighter. It is impossible to wait for the above approval, so they need to make up their own minds. Speaking of which, Major General Dottred can be regarded as a good general in the Romanian army, but unfortunately he failed to perform well in the Second Balkan War, so the first expansion after the war failed. Become a division commander. The Romanian army has different evaluations for divisions that were trained before World War I and those who were trained on the side after World War I, and the status of division commanders is also different. Therefore, Major General Dottred wanted to make an achievement for his colleagues to see, and Lieutenant General Ankada's plan made his heart move. Major General Dottred asked what he was most worried about. What if we launch an attack on Hartseg and the enemy in the direction of Sibiu attacks Petrosini? Sibiu was at a distance of 55 kilometers northeast of Petrosini, while Diva and Hartseg were both to the northwest, and in Sibiu were stationed the 51st and 63rd divisions of the Austro-Hungarian army. If he and Lieutenant General Ankada attack Hartseg with all their strength, the enemy in Sibiu will definitely send troops to flank them, so they have to be on guard. Lieutenant General Ankada pointed to a military map, a location 10 kilometers away from Petrosini. As for the enemy of Sibiu, this is what I think about, leaving a brigade of troops here to defend the enemy army from Sibiu. Major General Dottred saw through the map that the location that Lieutenant General Ankada was referring to was an unnamed highland with river valleys on both sides. A small village called Petrilla is also marked on a flat next to the highlands. Lieutenant General Ankada said the intention of defending here. I not only checked this place from the military map, but also asked the local people specifically. They told me where to go if I want to go to Sibiu. Considering the terrain advantages, I chose this place. Lieutenant General Ankada's words persuaded him, and Major General Dottred played Ziogiu and which brigade to send. As if seeing through the meaning of Major General Dottred's words, Lieutenant General Ankada said it in a grand manner. Considering the importance of this position, I decided to keep my 2nd Brigade defending here. Chapter 305 Battle of Transylvania 3. They are all soldiers, and of course they do things vigorously and resolutely. After leaving behind the 2nd Brigade of the Guard Division that afternoon, the remainder of the 1st Guard Division and the 9th Division of the Guards Division marched towards Hartseg. Luckily Hartseg was not far from Petrosini, and they set off in the afternoon, and reached the outskirts of Hartseg just before the sun went down. When the troops stopped to station to establish forward positions, the 2 ambitious division commanders planned to use this time to choose a high place to quietly observe the Austro-Hungarian troops stationed here. This observation shows that the Austro-Hungarian army, which was stationed only yesterday, has initially established a position here. This surprised Major General Dottred, who was observing. I didn't expect that the Austro-Hungarian army was also well trained, and the outline of the position was formed in just 1 day. This is a trench, and the front is a foxhole, and the machine gun position needs to be covered. The traffic trench here is already half a person high. The two put down their binoculars and saw the solemnity in each other's eyes. It seemed that this battle was not easy to fight. It was Lieutenant General Ankada who was the first to speak. Let's go back. First point. After he finished speaking, he quietly retreated to the position behind him, and Major General Dottred also retreated with him. Back in the command post of the forward position, Lieutenant General Ankada spoke up. Hasseg's defenders couldn't have allowed the fortifications to be built to this level in just 24 hours. There must be a problem. Lieutenant General Ankada's words aroused the approval of Major General Dottred. That's right. Judging from the construction of the fortifications, it seems that they have been built for 3 days, but they only arrived here yesterday. And I also specially observed the housing situation in this small town. According to my estimation, there are less than 500 residents in the town. And it's not possible for them to call residents to build it, so that's weird. 2. While puzzled by the speed at which the two Romanian division commanders were building fortifications for the Austro-Hungarian army, in a house in Hatson, Major General Herman Kumanek, commander of the 7th Austro-Hungarian Army Division, and Major General Artur Arz, commander of the 35th Division, were discussing the Romanian troops that appeared. I didn't expect these Romanians to come over so quickly. It seems that there are no more than us. Major General Arz, are we going to teach them a lesson tonight and tell them not to be too presumptuous? The one who was speaking was Major General Arz, the commander of the 35th Division, who was kicked out of Ploiesti yesterday. It seems that he was still haunted by the raid yesterday and wanted to teach the Romanian army who had just arrived here a lesson. Major General Arz's words did not attract a response from Major General Kumanek. Instead, the Major General who rushed over from Deva advised the radical 35th Division commander, Major Arz, I think the priority now is to step up the construction of the fortifications. You must know that we only have the front fortifications built to a certain scale. But there are still some unbuilt ones on the flanks and backs. If you can't scare the opposite side, Romanians, then we will be under too much pressure to defend. In the words of Major General Kumanek, Arz's attempt to raid Romania was completely in vain. Without the support of the elite 7th Division, the 35th Division, which he had retreated, would not have succeeded. You must know that he suffered casualties of more than 3,000 casualties in the Ploiesti raid yesterday, and the loss of weapons and equipment also made him distressed. While retreating yesterday, his division had damaged and lost artillery to the gate. You must know that the Austro-Hungarian army is not comparable before the war. At that time, a fully staffed division had 72 artillery pieces, but after several years of war, the number of first-level artillery pieces of the Austro-Hungarian army division is generally only half of that before the war. The loss of the gate is more than 40% of the battle damage, and it is too late to add. He can only count on the 7th Division. You must know that as the 7th Division composed of all Hungarians, it is not comparable to his 35th Division. As a top-ranked division that still has its own name, Warrior, the 7th Division ranks among the best in the Austro-Hungarian army, when the Austro-Hungarian army generally has only half of the weapons and equipment before the war. Reach 2 doors. Moreover, the division has a lot of other equipment. For example, the machine guns assigned to the battalion level in other divisions are assigned to the company level in this division. And as the commander of the division, Kumanek has a cautious character. Although this has made the 7th Division not perform well in the battle for several years, it has not caused the 7th to suffer any major losses. And because the character of the division commander is also trusted by the superior commander, the 7th Division was used to defend key positions in several battles. This time, the 7th Division was also arranged at the key point of Deva, and when encountering the Romanian army, Major General Kumanek really chose the most secure way. So Major General Arz's desire for revenge came to an end. This night, the two armies were in peace, and they were recharging their batteries and preparing for tomorrow's battle. In the early morning of the 7th, the invisible tension over Herzog was dignified. The armies representing both sides were also preparing for the start of the battle. On the Romanian side, a large number of artillery pieces are being prepared before the war, and boxes of ammunition have been placed next to the gun emplacements built overnight. And many ammunition boxes have been opened, and soldiers are in charge of making final checks on the shells at the launching position. The soldiers belonging to the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard were also making final preparations. Some of them are checking their weapons, making sure they are in good working order for the upcoming battle. Some people are bowing their heads and praying to God to ensure that they can walk off the battlefield alive. Others smoked cigarettes and chatted loudly with their comrades to relieve their inattention. There are even people who are squinting and resting this morning. It seems that this is either because they are strong and confident in themselves, or they don't care about it all. Lieutenant General Ankada looked at the soldiers who were about to attack and asked Lieutenant Colonel Malmo, the regiment leader beside them, "What should you do in this attack yourself?" Faced with the inquiries from the division commander himself, Lieutenant Colonel Malmo, who belongs to the 1st Division, 1st Brigade and 2nd Regiment of the Imperial Guard, is of course very clear. My regiment's mission is to test the weaknesses of the enemy's position and find out the firepower on the position point. Lieutenant Colonel Malmo's words made Lieutenant General Ankada very satisfied, and he patted Lieutenant Colonel on the shoulder to show his encouragement. Then Lieutenant General Ankada said that Major General Dotrad, who was waiting to watch the performance of the 1st Division of the Guard, said, "It's almost time, let's go to the command post to observe." Okay, Your Excellency Lieutenant General, it is my honor to be able to observe the battle of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard up close. When he came to the command post, Lieutenant General Ankada picked up the phone and gave the order. "I'm Ankada, and I order the shelling to begin." Chapter 306 Battle of Transylvania 4. With the order of Lieutenant General Ankada, the Romanian artillery positions began to get busy. The loader put the prepared shells into the gun hall. The observer reported the target position data. The gunner pulled the launch rope to hit the shells on the heads of the Austro-Hungarian soldiers, and then the remaining shells from the gun hall were ejected. Then again and again, another shell was fired into the Austro-Hungarian position point. Because there is not much time left for the 1st and 19th Divisions of the Imperial Guard, in order to pursue better results, the artillery fires at high speed as soon as they come up. In just 30 minutes, 3 bases of artillery shells were hit on the ground. The fierce artillery destroyed everything on the position, and the broken wood, guns, and human body parts were all blasted to the sky. Even a Maxim machine gun on the position was directly hit, and the machine gun parts and bullets scattered at high speed caused damage to the soldiers hiding in the trenches, making this trench form a blood-red sure field point. The fierce artillery shelling made the Austro-Hungarian soldiers on the ground miserable, which made the 2 Austro-Hungarian generals who were watching behind them also worried. Major General ARZ, the commander of the 35th Division, couldn't stand it, mainly because most of the shelling positions were filled with his soldiers. "It's not going to go on like this. Just being beaten and not fighting back will hurt morale too much, and the next battle will be difficult to fight." ALZ's remarks drew no response from Major General Kumanek, the Austro-Hungarian 17th Division commander said in his unfeeling voice. "It's unbearable when the artillery starts, and there is no war without the protection of the artillery. Patience is the virtue of the soldier. Let the artillery fight back now. It will be too difficult for us to fight. And I have carefully observed that the artillery of the Romanians is very accurate. And from the scale of the bombardment, the enemy has a lot more artillery than us, and it would be quite disadvantageous for us if we fought with them." Speaking of which, Major General Kumanek rarely told a joke. If the artillery is consumed, then the enemy can use the artillery to shoot at you and me in the forehead. Listening to Major General Kumanek's not funny joke, Major General ARZ knew that what the other party said was the most correct way, and now he can only watch his soldiers suffer under the fire. The fierce artillery fire came and went quickly. After half an hour of shelling, the artillery fire raging on the heads of the Austro-Hungarian soldiers stopped. At this time, the devastated position was in a mess, and the smoke made the soldiers cough. Collapsed positions can be seen everywhere, and there are still blood-red stumps left on the positions. At the same time, the screams of the wounded soldiers also made other Austro-Hungarian soldiers who escaped the disaster feel sympathy. Just then a scream rang out. "The enemy has touched it." This scream made the Austro-Hungarian soldiers open their eyes to observe the front of the position, but the smoke that had not yet retreated made it impossible to see the enemy in front of the position. They only felt that there were many figures in front of the position, as if there were enemies everywhere. At this time, a soldier who couldn't bear the pressure pulled the trigger on the position of the heavy silhouette and shot the bullet where he thought there was an enemy. As if receiving a signal, the gunfire on the Austro-Hungarian position was loud, and even the sound of machine gun fire was added. In front of the Austro-Hungarian positions, all weapons were added to the chorus, except for the artillery, which had not been ordered to fire. Damn it, the enemy hasn't even come up. What are they fighting? Are they dizzy? How did Oles act as the brigade commander? The performance on the ground made Major General ARZ furious, because he found that the positions where the gunfire was loud were all his soldiers. In fact, there is a reason why 35 is so unbearable. The 35th Division, which was stabbed early the day before yesterday and drove out of Petrosiny with quite a few casualties, was already demoralized and then built a day of fortifications in Hartseg without taking a breath, and just woke up today and was photographed defending the Romanians' attack in an unfinished position on the front line. As a result, he encountered a sudden fire attack. It is reasonable to have some overreactions, of course. The overreaction of the soldiers of the 35th Division did not take long to calm down. The reason why the soldiers quickly recovered is that most of them are veterans who have been on the battlefield. After a short vent, they immediately corrected their mentality. Also, seeing that the situation of the soldiers was not right, the Austro-Hungarian officers desperately tried to appease them. At this time, the smoke of gunpowder dissipated, and the attacking Imperial Guard 1st Division's real postgraduate entrance examination came. After the Austro-Hungarian soldiers saw the situation outside their positions, they no longer shot blindly, but took the lead in aiming at the officers, machine guns and other targets, and also use the advantages of the position to intercept the soldiers of the 1st Guard Division in a clear-cut way. The Austro-Hungarian soldiers' response showed the response of veterans who have experienced war. The soldiers of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard, who were under increased pressure, were not at all flustered by this scene. While they used obstacles such as stones, earth bags, trees, and craters in front of the position to cover their shots, they also use these obstacles to alternately attack forward. As the distance between the two sides gradually shortened, the accuracy of the shooting of the soldiers on both sides was also greatly improved. This also caused the casualties of both sides to increase by leaps and bounds, and both sides endured the sacrifice of their own soldiers, but it was a little surprising that the attackers had the upper hand. The reason for this is simple, because most of the Austro-Hungarian soldiers were mobilized troops. Before entering the army, these soldiers were people from all walks of life in society, and they rarely had contact with guns. And after the outbreak of the war, they will not be given time to train slowly, so in terms of marksmanship, except for the birth of a hunter, it will not be very good. The Romanian soldiers belong to the standing army. Most of them have more than 3 years of enlistment energy, and most of the soldiers in the 1st Guard Division as the ace have 5 years of military experience. Even if they have not experienced war, their shooting and tactical actions have basically become instinctive, so their shooting accuracy is much higher than that of Austria-Hungary. Lieutenant General Ankada, who was observing behind the position, watched his soldiers fight with the enemy in front of the Austro-Hungarian position, and couldn't help but praise. The Malmo team played well, and they fought back and forth with the enemy's brigade and defenders. Ankada's words convinced Major General Reed, who was also observing the battlefield. Everyone is a soldier, and the expert will know, if there is any. The 1st Imperial Guard Division fought back and forth with a regiment of troops and a brigade defender, and this was the skill. Major General Reed thought over and over about his 19th Division, and found that none of his troops could compete with this regiment. And just when Major General Reed admired the strength of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard, a staff officer ran in to tell them a rather startling news. Reporting to the two generals, we found that the enemy had no fortifications on the two flanks. What? Chapter 307 Battle of Transylvania, 5. Careful. There's a heavy machine gun on the right side. Come with the machine gun crew for cover. Tommy, you kill him. Captain Mizik, who was embarrassedly hiding behind the trees, was commanding his soldiers to fight back. They were suppressed by the Austro-Hungarian soldiers and could not move in the Grove Point. As soon as Mizk's voice fell, a Madsen machine gun crew rushed over with their heads bowed and their waists down. After using a small dirt slope as a bunker, the Madsen machine gun fired at the Austro-Hungarian heavy machine gun hundreds of meters away. This was telling the opposite side not to be too arrogant. Sure enough, this new firepower point became a thorn in the opponent's side, and the Markin heavy machine gun immediately shot here. The enemy wants to tell them that light machine guns don't want to compete with heavy machine guns. The Madsen machine gun group, which was being taken care of, was immediately in danger, but this also greatly reduced the pressure on other soldiers. And Tommy, who was named by Mizk, immediately found a hidden position, ready to let the arrogant Markin taste his power, and what he prepared for the other side was the Mauser 98mm rifle newly developed by Romania. This model rifle was also developed by the Bucharest Arsenal 2 years ago. Compared with a traditional Mauser 98 rifle, the main improvement of this gun is the addition of a retractable tripod and a 3x telescope installed on the gun body. Allows the user to shoot enemies from a distance with greater precision. Because it is selected from hundreds of thousands of Mauser 98s, the output of this gun is not high. The 19th Division was only allocated 150 units, and the 7th Company only had such a unit. Now Tommy was framing the machine gun glove that was holding down their company. After relaxing physically and mentally, and holding his breath, the machine gunner, whose face was flushed with excitement from shooting his comrade in arms, appeared among the cross stars in the frame. Hold your body position and pull the trigger. In the blink of an eye, Tommy saw a blood flower explode from the chest of the machine gunner, whose hands were stained with the blood of his comrade in arms. When he received it, he fell to the ground, and the sound of machine guns raging on their head stopped. Perfect. Tommy whispered to himself. The reason for him to do this is to be able to kill the enemy with one shot from hundreds of meters away. But not only is his shooting skill high, but also requires good luck. The reality is not like film and television works or games. A sniper can kill an enemy hundreds of meters away with a single shot. This distance is no longer enough for the naked eye. Even with a 4x telescope, it is not easy. This distance often requires a shooting frequency of 2 to 4 shots, and it takes God's favor to hit the target with one shot. Obviously, God is very close to Tommy. After killing the machine gunner, Tommy didn't dare to be careless. He quickly removed the bullet casing and loaded another bullet into the chamber. You must know that a heavy machine gun group can have 4 to 6 people, and these people basically operate machine guns. Sure enough, after discovering that the main shooter was killed, the sub-shooter immediately stepped forward to operate the heavy machine gun, but Tommy would not give him a chance at this time, and the same steps would be repeated. But this time, it was not blessed by God, and the shot hit the right side of the deputy shooter, although he missed the sub-shooter, but the bullet that suddenly hit him next to him still startled him. But before he could react, another bullet hit him. The rest of the machine gun crew knew there was a sharpshooter eyeing them, and they couldn't stay in that position any longer. So the rest of the people dismantled the machine guns and quickly changed places. It's just that their machine gun operation has been unlucky today, and they will be targeted again in another place, and they will still be targeted in another place. After the fight, no one dared to operate the machine gun. After the Austro-Hungarian machine gun was suppressed by Tommy, Misk shouted loudly with a big hand. Follow me, rush over. Then Misk jumped out of the tree to cover himself, and rushed towards the soldiers defending Austria-Hungary. Seeing that his company commander took the lead in charging the 7th Company, the other soldiers were encouraged, and the 7th Company's momentum came up this time, and they all rushed up. Major General Dotrud, the commander of the 19th Division, who was watching the battle from behind, saw this scene, and couldn't help but ask, "Who is this?" Hearing his teacher's question, he accompanied Captain Delson to speak. "This is a captain and company commander named Misk in our regiment. All the soldiers who charge together are attached to him. He and his company are the most hard-working in our regiment." Inadvertently, Captain Delson praised his subordinates in front of the division commander. "I know this company. As far as I know, they are the company with the least vacations. However, it can reduce the rest time of the soldiers and increase the training content. It is not disgusting. This Misk is also very good at training soldiers." It seems that Major General Dotrud knows Captain Misk, and he has a good impression, which makes many people envious of this Captain Misk. As long as there is a good impression in front of the division commander, the Captain Misk will have a smooth road to promotion to the school level officer. But at this time, the head of Delson spoke up. "Actually, this Misk still has many shortcomings, such as being very courageous and like to cause trouble, etc." The words of Captain Delson were directly planned by Major General Dotrud. "Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Delson, don't show your little thought. This kind of excellent grassroots officer should walk through the grassroots troops step by step is the best choice for him, so I won't rob you." The head of Delson, who was seen through, could only accompany the teacher to smile and resolve the embarrassment after being seen through. However, Major General Dotrud has no intention of caring about these now, because there are too few troops that perform as well as Mizik's 7th Company in the war situation. The current situation is that the flank offensive of the 19th Division is being defended by Austria-Hungary. The 17th Division was blocked and felt completely immobile. This was not good news for the 2 division commanders who only had 3 days. It seems that it is the elite Austro-Hungarian troops who are defending the flanks. I'm still too impatient to grab the opportunity to attack the flanks. Major General Dotrud, who had already come to a conclusion, couldn't help but think of the flank attack he was confident about when he heard that the enemy's flank had not been built at noon point. It should have been thought that the Austro-Hungarian army has also fought for several years. How could they make such a mistake? Seeing that the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard was not under too much pressure, I thought it would not be too bad, but it seems that it is too bad now. Too much point with what Major General Dotrud said. All the officers present felt a little ashamed. Looking at the expressions of his subordinate officers, Major General Dotrud felt that the words were almost finished, so he spoke. Stop attacking. If you can't attack now, you will lose troops in vain. Next, give me a summary and educate me to continue fighting tomorrow. Following the orders of Major General Dotrud, the officers and soldiers who were fighting on the front line like Captain Mizik retreated. After some statistics, this afternoon, the 19th Division suffered nearly 1,000 casualties, which made the division commander Dotrud a great fire. These casualties are still effective, but today's offensive is not smooth. It seems that it is better to change positions with the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard. By the way, we will discuss the matter of the general attack tomorrow. Thinking of this, Major General Dotrud intends to go to Lieutenant General Ankada to discuss it, and he doesn't want to fight a battle like this today. Chapter 308 Battle of Transylvania 6. A brigade of the Guards Division, which had been left in Petrilla at the outbreak of the Battle of Hatzeg, was also attacked by the Austro-Hungarian army in Sibiu. The 2nd Brigade of the 1st Guard Division, who was left by Lieutenant General Ankada to resist the defenders from Sibiu, is also very trustworthy. The main reason is that the tenacious style of Colonel Zoltan, the commander of the 2nd Brigade, is well appreciated by Lieutenant General. The task of defending Petrilla to protect Petroshany from being recaptured by the Austro-Hungarian army, and thus putting himself in a dangerous situation, can only be reassured by Colonel Zoltan. The Austro-Hungarian army in Sibiu moved as expected by Lieutenant General Ankada, even faster than he expected. The Austro-Hungarian army had already arrived near Petrilla when the Battle of Hatzeg broke out, and the 2nd Guards Brigade defending here had not even built the fortifications. The Austro-Hungarian army saw this situation and thought there was an opportunity, and even the artillery preparations were too late to launch an attack, but they did not know that the 2nd Guard Brigade was staying here, and the style of the brigade commander Colonel Zoltan was also very different. Don't understand. A good Colonel Zoltan, when the enemy launched an attack, killed the enemy with the advantage of firepower, and then launched a counterattack when the Austro-Hungarian army did not recover. Colonel Zoltan's strategy played a role, and Austria-Hungary did not expect that the Romanian defenders defending here would be so bold, and they would fight so violently when their troops were at an absolute disadvantage. So they were defeated, and even the starting position was taken. If Zoltan hadn't ordered a retreat, because he was afraid that the attack would be too deep and would be surrounded by the superior Austro-Hungarian army, then it is estimated that even his artillery positions could be captured. Fortunately, Zoltan Brigade Commander has a keen sense of smell on the battlefield. If he really enters the artillery position, the reassembled Austro-Hungarian army will leave an unforgettable memory for the 2nd Brigade. Although the artillery positions were not captured, but with 1 brigade of troops suppressing 1.5 divisions, Zoltan and his 2 brigade could be considered as the Guard Division. But now Colonel Zoltan has no time to savor the taste of victory in this battle. And now he urgently needs to prepare for the next battle. Inside the busy brigade headquarters, Colonel Zoltan was on the phone. Dove, have your artillery battalion fortifications been built? Do you still need help? Your artillery battalion is the key to this defense, and there can be no mistakes. You can hide it for me without orders not to fire. Colonel Zoltan is a sturdy middle-aged man in his 40s. His previous tenure has also risen step by step. He has successively served as company commander, deputy battalion commander, division staff officer, deputy commander, team commander, and brigade commander. Years of military career have cultivated his keen understanding of the battlefield, and it also gave him a rough and crazy atmosphere of a soldier, also commonly known as ruffian. That's why he can launch a counterattack when the opponent's foothold is not stable and attacking, which also shows that he is not sticking to the rules. Just as Zoltan was calling the artillery battalion, an officer with the rank of lieutenant colonel came over. "Brigadier, are you looking for me?" The lieutenant colonel is the chief of staff of the 2nd Brigade, Antonio. In line with his temperament, he has served as a teacher in a military school for many years, so his bookish atmosphere is heavier. Due to the expansion of the army, he was transferred to the 2nd Brigade as the chief of staff for less than a year, so Zoltan, who is the brigade commander in the staff work, needs to pay more attention. Yes, chief of staff, please take a seat. Zoltan greeted his chief of staff to sit down and said what he was looking for. The chief of staff is like this. The 1st Regiment has a very heavy task because it guards the frontal line of defense. And their regiment commander Domik has asked me for weapons and equipment a few times. Go down and ask them what else they need. Okay brigade commander, I'll take a look at it now. Lieutenant Colonel Antonio, who had just sat down, immediately took over the task given by the brigade commander and rushed to the front line. After instructing his chief of staff, Zoltan immediately picked up the phone again. "Hello, Lieutenant Colonel Solo? I'm Zoltan. Do you still have mines at your station? How could this not be there? The domestic logistics officers don't know what we need on the front line. Then do we still have machine guns? I want them to. How can you say that you are also the chief logistics officer of our division? How can you only give me 20 machine guns? Don't you have 5 machine guns? What happened to the equipment of the 8th Division? I'll borrow it first. Anyway, they haven't arrived yet. Can't you use it first, then give it back to them when you're done? After some bargaining with the logistics supervisor who guarded Petroshina's supplies, Zoltan got some more weapons and equipment. However, before Zoltan had time to be happy, a staff officer ran in front of him panting. "Brigade commander, the enemy has increased their troops." "What? How many troops did the enemy reinforce?" Zoltan was shocked by the staff's words, and he hurriedly asked key questions about the weapons and equipment. That Petroshiny had asked for the exact number of our people is not clear, but according to the estimate, the strength is about 1 division. Zoltan's complexion changed greatly at the words of the staff officer. And the situation was even worse than he imagined. Now I only have 1 brigade, and now I have too many enemies. There are 2.5 divisions that are 6 times my own. What should I do? A division is around. A division is around. What can I do to block these enemies? Zoltan circled back and forth in the headquarters, thinking of ways to deal with it all the time in his mind, chanting words in his mouth. Let go and attack them from the front? No, this will put Petroshiny in a dangerous place. As long as there is a division on the opposite side to defend, I can't take him. Then how about retreating slowly with successive resistance? This is even more impossible. It is too close to Petroshiny, and it takes 2 retreats to reach the city, and this needs to be built and fortified first. I myself think that there are not enough troops, redundant manpower to build fortifications. Zoltan Nicholas has countless methods, but none of them are suitable in the current situation. It is best that he finds that only sticking to it is the best choice. Thinking of this, he instructed the staff officer who reported the letter. Draft an order immediately. From now on, all officers and soldiers of the 2 Brigade must be stationed at their posts and cannot retreat without permission. Immediately let the military police set up boundaries behind us, and every officer and soldier can only move forward and not retreat. Zoltan's words made the staff feel a sense of bleakness, which meant that more than 5,000 people from the 2nd Brigade could only die in this small village called Petrella. Seeing that the staff member didn't move, Zoltan glared at him. "What are you still doing? Hurry up." Zoltan picked up the phone again, after driving away the staff officer. "Lieutenant Colonel Solo, I'm Zoltan. Now I need your help. I didn't ask you to send someone over. I remember a regiment of reinforcement coming tomorrow. You have to stop them and send them to me. I have 3 divisions of Austro-Hungarian troops on my side. I will tell the division commander that he will understand and the troops behind will stop them. I want it urgently. I will ask you this time point." After Zoltan finished speaking, he put down the phone in his hand. He said that he would stand firm, but he would not stand firm. There must be reinforcement backed by Petrosini. As long as you can withstand the attack in front of you, it will be much easier to fight. If the Romanian army did not begin to assemble until the outbreak of the war, in order to paralyze Austria-Hungary to achieve the maximum effect of the raid, it would be impossible for these 3 Austrian-Hungarian divisions to form a 6 times force gap with themselves. Boom, boom, boom. Point just thinking about when he had encountered such a situation, the sudden sound of shelling pulled Zoltan to reality. Looking at his soldiers being ravaged by shelling, Zoltan picked up his hat and planned to go to the front to take a look. Chapter 309 Battle of Transylvania 7. The news that Petrela's 2nd Brigade was besieged by nearly 3 Austrian-Hungarian divisions soon reached Lieutenant General Ankada. Unfortunately, he was negotiating with Major General Dotrud that the attack was not going well. What's wrong? Major General Dotrud asked Lieutenant General Ankada, who had just read the telegram, and he just noticed a trace of concern in Lieutenant General's eyes in the face of Major General Dotrud's inquiry. Lieutenant General Ankada did not hide it. "This is a telegram from Zoltan, commander of my 2nd Brigade, saying that he was attacked by 3 Austro-Hungarian divisions." Lieutenant General Ankada's words made Major General Dotrud feel a little nervous. The situation was already very bad when 1 brigade was completely crushed by 3 divisions. Major General Dotrud asked tentatively, "Should we return to Petrosini and stick to it?" Hearing Major General Dotrud's resignation, Lieutenant General Ankada himself also thought about countermeasures. He was very unwilling to go back to Ankada like this, and when he finally saw an opportunity, he didn't want to pass away from him in vain. But he now needs to dissuade Dotrud for a good reason. It's not a good idea to retreat now. If we retreat, it will become 5 Austro-Hungarian divisions against our 2 divisions, which is equally difficult to fight, and our attack without authorization will make it difficult for us in the future. Dotrud understood Ankada's words completely. It was because they attacked without authorization to this point, but if it could be saved, he was very willing. But now the problem is that, if Petrosini is recaptured by Austria-Hungary, their 2 divisions will be surrounded, and even if they can escape back to Romania, they will most likely be court-martialed. In the face of Ankada's words, Dotrud also spoke bluntly. "All of this is based on the fact that we hold Petrosini, and if we are taken back by Austria-Hungary, we will be transferred to the reserve. In addition to the worst result, Dotrud understands without saying that Ankada is ordered to retire. They are only in their 40s and 50s, and can at least contribute more than 10 years of energy to Romania in the army. Being ordered to retire is also a result they cannot bear." But Ankada's words dispelled Dotrud's pessimism. "Who said we need to return Petrosini? We can actually use reinforcement." Major General Dotrud immediately understood what Lieutenant General Ankada meant. "Are you going to let the 5th Division of the follow-up reinforcement rush to Petrela for rescue?" Yes, the 5th Division is a veteran Romanian army. Although not as famous as the 2nd and 3rd Divisions of the Imperial Guard, it is also famous in the army. The General Staff also took into account the importance of Diva when making plans, and they were all arranged for elite soldiers, except for the 9th Division, because the station was here in order not to arouse the vigilance of Austria-Hungary, and it could not be changed at will, as the first reinforcement of the 5th Division. Of course, the combat power is strong. And it is more perfect that Lieutenant General Ankada is the former commander of the 5th Division. Lieutenant General Ankada's words reassured Major General Dotrud, but he raised another question. "But according to the itinerary, it will take another day for the 5th Division to reach Petrosini. Can your 2nd Brigade stop the offensive of the 3 divisions?" "Don't worry about this. I don't dare to say more. It's more than enough to let the 2nd Brigade defend for a day or 2. Ankada understood Dotrud's fears that, if the defending troops didn't wait for reinforcement, it would be disastrous, at least for them. However, he still has confidence in the 2 Brigade Ankada under his command, and he is not required to keep it for a long time. How can he be called a guardian if he can't keep it for a day? When solving their own hidden dangers, the 2 of course will not forget their original purpose. So what do we do next? Major General Dotrud, who asked this question, felt a little red in his cheeks. The performance of the 9th Division today made his words lack confidence. However, Lieutenant General Ankada also knew about the performance of 9 yesterday. Isn't it because they have never fought against the elite Austro-Hungarian troops? Ankada was not in the mood to care about the current situation of the 9th Division. He said it himself. There is not much time left for us, and then we must win Hatzeg as soon as possible. Red also understood what Ankada meant. This was to let everyone not be afraid of casualties. It seems that today's Battle of 9 made Ankada a little uncomfortable, but Red felt a little wronged about this. The conscience of heaven and earth, the 9th Division is one of the 4 newly created divisions during the major expansion. Although Red, who was the division commander during this period, was very focused on training, he was far behind other divisions in terms of training time. You must know that at most, only 2 divisions were formed and trained in a year. When it was their turn to form the 9th Division, they formed 4 divisions at the same time, so the quality of their officers was far less than that of the previous troops. Ankada thought about it and continued. Well, your 9th Division is responsible for the main position attack, and my 1st Division of the Imperial Guard is responsible for the flank attack. It seems to me that it will be the elite 7th Division of Austria-Hungary. It seems that he still has some understanding of the situation of the 9th Division on the flank. As long as the 9th Division continues to do flanking cover, the effect is not very good. Fortunately, the 35th Division, which was defending when the 1st Division of the Imperial Guards attacked the main position, was suffering, so he planned to change it, and he had to bite the hard bones himself. In the face of Lieutenant General Ankada's request, Major General Red was eager for it, of course, and readily agreed. The next step, of course, is to share the opponent's information, that you know with the opponent. Whether it is the 9th Division for the 7th Division on the defensive flank or the Guard for the 35th Division, everyone has a more or less understanding of the opponent's style, technique and tactical level. Avoid a lot of losses at the same time. The 5 divisions that have arrived in Targuru are also undergoing their final rest. The 5 divisions who have already arrived at Targuru said that it was the 5 divisions, but this was not true, because only the 2nd Regiment of the 5th Division Brigade and the 75th Field Artillery Battalion of the Artillery Regiment have arrived here, together with some divisional military police officers and others. The strength is less than 5,000. However, this does not affect the mood of Major General Fergus, the commander of the 5th Division. He has already sent a report to Lieutenant General Ankada, who is on the front line, telling him that the 5th Division has arrived in Targuru. The implication is that there is any benefit. Everyone enjoyed it together, and at the same time he also reported his whereabouts to General Salamik, the commander of Army Group South. Originally this was just a polite remark, but Lieutenant General Ankada really gave him a big gift. Looking at the soldiers of the 5th Division who kept walking out of the carriages on the platform inside the station, Major General Fergus felt a little sullen in his heart. What he was holding in his hand was the telegram sent to him by Lieutenant General Ankada. In this telegram, Ankada first outlined the huge benefits of his plan, then talked about the current difficulties, and finally expressed the hope that the 5th Division would quickly reinforce the 2nd Brigade in Petrilla. Seeing that his teacher had been thinking, the Chief of Staff who sent the telegram couldn't help but ask, "How should we reply to Lieutenant General Ankada?" Hearing the question from his Chief of Staff, Major General Fergus said with a self-deprecating sentence, "Everyone else has sent the battle plan, can we refuse it? Besides, we didn't see their 2 brigade defending in Petrilla facing the attack of 3 divisions. We must reinforce this time." After understanding what his division commander meant, the Chief of Staff sent a telegram to the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard on the front line. Seeing the departure of the Chief of Staff, Division Commander Fergus gave a big order. Records. The order was out of the logistics force, so the soldiers immediately prepared to pedal, and we went to Petrosiany. At the same time, we sent a report to the follow-up troops, telling them not to stop at Targuru to rest and go directly to Petrosiany to fight. "Yes, I'll give the order right now." Commander Fergus watched the staff officer who gave his order leave, and also put on a thick military coat, and walked out of the station building. These soldiers are going to the battlefield tomorrow. He plans to go to the platform to see the status of his soldiers. Chapter 310 Battle of Diva, End. The winter night wind blows across the Transylvanian plateau, and a new day begins. After a night's rest, the two armies in Hardseg were also preparing for a new battle as the sun approached. Hurry up and bring the ammunition here. Rome, come and check if there is something wrong with this gun. Hurry up and clean the barrel. It will be used in a while. On the artillery position. The artillerymen are busy preparing for the war. As the god of war, Romania is also very important, and it is also implemented in comparison with other powers in training. For example, due to the invention of the goniometer, the peripheral sight and the use of wired communication equipment, major countries have successively implemented indirect aiming shooting, and the observation post and the artillery position are arranged separately, and Romania is not behind them at all, and they all followed up the same time. This is also the point where Romania can rival or even surpass Austria-Hungary in artillery. As the temporary commander of the artillery group of the two divisions on the artillery position, Colonel Madtizzi, the commander of the artillery regiment of the 1st Guard Division, was also making the final preparations. Do you all know the importance of today's battle? No. Are you all ready? Ready. Looking at the artillery officers of the two divisions who were under his control, Colonel Madtizzi sighed that he was very energetic and waved his hand. Go back and get ready. As the artillery positions were getting ready for today's battle, Lieutenant General Ankada and Major General Dottred were confirming the final pre-battle plan in the command post in front of the position. Major General Dottred is the division commander. I won't talk much about the importance of today's attack plan. We must make a breakthrough in today's attack, and we can't be concerned about casualties at this time. Looking at Lieutenant General Ankada, who spoke earnestly, Major General Dottred knew that this was not because the commander of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard became a mother-in-law who wanted to nag, and yesterday the 19th Division played too badly. He was afraid that he would be upset about it. Anxiety didn't dare to give it a shot, but Ankada looked down on himself too much. Major General Dottred spoke about it. Lieutenant General, please rest assured, today I will take the enemy's position at the cost of casualties, as long as the 7th Division defending the flank cannot reinforce the position. In the face of Major General Dottred's words, Lieutenant General Ankada confirmed that he said it in general. Don't worry about this. The 1st Division of the Imperial Guard will definitely be able to break through the flank positions, but it can still be guaranteed that the 7th Austro-Hungarian Division will not be able to reinforce the frontal battlefield. Speaking of which, Lieutenant General Ankada said at the end. Then I will hand it over to you next, and I wish us all victory. We can all win. After Lieutenant General Ankada left with the personnel of the 1st Guard Division, Dottred called the staff and ordered, I'm now drafting my order, and the artillery will immediately launch an artillery bombardment against the enemy in front of me. Except for the 2 base ammunition that must be left, I will shoot out all the others. Before the shelling ends, the combat troops must approach the enemy's position within a range of 200 meters. Immediately after the shelling was over, the raid began. In addition, a secret order was issued to the frontline commander. I only need to break through the enemy's front line of defense, and don't give me casualties. Major General Dottred's words made the staff take a deep breath, but after seeing the face and tone of his teacher, he immediately lost his mind and hurriedly issued the order to the frontline commander. After the staff left, the chief of staff of the 9th Division had to persuade him. Senior Commander, it is easy to accidentally get hurt when approaching the opponent's position 200 during the shelling. Are you thinking about it? Don't think about it. I know that there must be a lot of accidental injuries, but how can you not die in war considering that his tone might be too blunt? Major General Dottred explained one more sentence. Today is the day to decide the outcome. Neither we nor the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard can afford to delay, so we have to make some choices. Major General Dottred's order was quickly conveyed, and the artillery groups of the 2 divisions left on the frontal battlefield were about to hit the already prepared artillery shells on the top of the defenders. The Austro-Hungarian 35th Division, which was defending from the front, immediately felt the pressure of the battlefield. They were all veterans who had been fighting for several years. As the commander of the 35th Division, Major General ARZ felt uncomfortable. Do the Romanians think there are too many shells? Major General ARZ passed through the observation post just after the shelling began, feeling the difference in this shelling, but thinking of the reason until he observed through a high-precision telescope. The Romanian soldiers on the battlefield took advantage of the shelling to touch their own positions, and there were a lot of them. No, this is the Romanians going to launch a general attack. Major General ARZ, who wanted to understand, immediately picked up the phone and connected to the artillery position behind the battlefield. I'm ARZ, and immediately start the artillery bombardment in front of the ground. Following the order of Major General ARZ, the hidden artillerymen of Austria-Hungary also threw artillery shells on the heads of the officers and soldiers of the 9th Division who were preparing to advance. However, as the artillery superior side, the Romanian artillery group led by Colonel Matizzi certainly will not turn a blind eye to this. After measuring the artillery positions of the defending army, the artillery fire of the attacking party immediately fell on the artillery positions that were ravaging their comrades. The fierce artillery fire made the Austro-Hungarian artillery positions misfire one after another. When the artillery of the defending army gradually disappeared, the officers and soldiers of the 9th Division who had moved to the front of the position immediately launched a surprise attack. Taking advantage of the fact that the defenders did not react from the artillery strike, the officers and soldiers of the 9th Division immediately entered the position and had a fierce battle with it. Contention. Russian as the elite of the 9th Division. The 7th Company led by Captain Mizik of course also appeared on the battlefield. But now Captain Mizik is not very good. There is a shrapnel wound on his right face that was smoked like African born. However, as the commander of a company, Mizik couldn't care about this. He wanted to command his soldiers to capture the position in front of him, because he was ordered to take this position regardless of casualties. For the sake of the lives of himself and his subordinates, he can only command and reduce the casualties of the company as much as possible. When Mizik gave loud orders to his soldiers, he also became a thorn in the eyes of the Austro-Hungarian soldiers. The dirty, still recognizable uniform of the officer, coupled with his pistol, instantly made him a very worthwhile target to shoot. So in a collapsed machine gun position not far from him, a rifle quietly protruded from it. Mizik, who was completely unaware, directed his soldiers to move forward, and at this moment an unnoticed corpse knocked him down. Then he heard a pop gunshot and felt a hot airflow past his ear. Only then did he realize that he was almost hit. Only at this time did the soldiers of the 7th Company realize that their company commander was almost killed, so they searched in the direction of the sound, only to find a shell on the collapsed machine gun position. Don't worry about him, grab the position quickly, we have more important things to do. Seeing that no enemy was found, Mizik immediately asked the soldiers to rush to snatch the position. In fact, among the positions defended by the entire 35th Division, the 7th Company is not a special case. Under the offensive of the 9th Division with artillery superiority and ignoring casualties, the 35th Division has already broken through several positions. The 35th Division launched several counterattacks under the order of Major General ARZ, but they were all blocked by artillery and the soldiers of the 9th Division. For a time, the frontal battlefield of the Austro-Hungarian army showed signs of being broken. The signs of the failure of the Austrian-Hungarian 35th Division have already attracted the attention of both parties. As its division commander, Major General ARZ can only ask for help now, and now the only person who can be asked for help is the Austrian-Hungarian 7th Division. But now the 7th Division is completely guarded. A division was entangled and unable to draw out any troops. Now I need reinforcement. The frontal enemy's offensive is too strong. They are all crazy and completely ignore the casualties. My 35th Division can't stand it anymore. My artillery has been exhausted, and you have seen that the other party's artillery has too much more than ours. There is absolutely no way. If you can't give reinforcement now, I certainly can't stop it. Now my soldiers have retreated to the last line of defense. If they are broken, they can only be defeated. So at 4:30 p.m., the Austro-Hungarian 35th Division, which had been hit one after another without reinforcement, collapsed, and its demoralized soldiers gave up their positions and fled to the rear. Seeing this situation, Major General ARZ's eyes were red, and he muttered to himself while frowning his hair, it's over, but of course the other officers in the headquarters would not sit back and watch their division commander, and immediately 2 staff officers supported him and retreated to the rear. and Humanek, the commander of the 7th Division, who was entangled with the 1st Division of the Guards on the defensive flank, was also quite decisive. After leaving a regiment to stand guard, he immediately retreated with the remaining soldiers of the 7th Division. Victory. When the battle report from the front was sent to the headquarters, it aroused cheers from the officers, but Lieutenant General Ankada and Major General Dotrud, who were the main commanders, would not be satisfied with this. Immediately send a report to the troops fighting on the front line, ordering them to immediately leave part of the troops to clean up the battlefield, and all the others to pursue the enemy. Don't give the enemy a chance to recuperate, and at the same time, immediately organize a small group of allied troops to detour in front of the enemy, and catch up immediately. Go to the main road to Diva and let them hold the enemy point. At this point, the Battle of Harteg is basically over. According to latest statistics, the Austro-Hungarian army, which was the losing side in this battle, had a total of 47 casualties, captured and missing, of which the 35th Division had more than half of the casualties, and the 7th Division was also defeated in the subsequent pursuit. As the victorious side of the Romanian army, casualties are not small. The number of casualties also reached 879, of which 9 divisions as the main attack accounted for 70 casualties. But the biggest effect of this battle is to put Dua directly in front of the 1st and 9th divisions of the Imperial Guard, and now it is like a bright red fruit waiting to be picked. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 Staff Increase Plan. Dua was captured by the 1st and 19th Divisions of the Guard. Inside the General Staff, a staff officer eagerly and loudly announced the shocking good news. Sure enough, this news made the General Staff boil. Is this true? Impossible. It's incredible. The news caused the staff officers of the General Staff to raise various questions. It's no wonder that they would ask questions. As the ones who know Romania's combat plan best, they are quite familiar with the current army groups south. There were only 3 Romanian divisions, less than 60,000 troops, that entered Transylvania from the southern front. And now there are at least 8 Austro-Hungarian divisions around them, with a strength of no less than 100,000. Faced with this situation, these staff officers are busy trying to get more Romanian soldiers to rush to Petrosini in order to facilitate the upcoming Austro-Hungarian counterattack. As a result, someone told them not to use it. The Diva they were preparing to win in half a month had already won it on the 3rd day. It's no wonder that these staff members can still be calm, and it's good that they didn't immediately ask for the detailed process facing the colleagues who came to ask questions from all directions. The staff officer spoke up. The specific situation will only be known after the battle report. Now I only know that the 19th Division and the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard captured Diva this morning. When the staff members were puzzled that the 19th Division and the 1st Imperial Guard Division could capture Diva in one fell swoop, Admiral Pilishin, who was the chief of the General Staff, was also interested. However, his wish could be fulfilled immediately, because a detailed battle report on the capture of Diva was now in front of him. This is a battle report jointly issued by Lieutenant General Ankada and Major General Dotrud. It describes the combat operation of the 2 divisions in detail. Only when they concealed the battle plan at the beginning, the telegraph machine of the 2 men broke down, and the fighter plane was slightly, even if it is fleeting, in the face of the real situation. Pilishin saw it at a glance, but in the face of the victory of capturing Diva, the chief of the General Staff turned a blind eye. Of course, the 2 also gave him the image of being daring, but this is not knowing. This should not be happy for the 2 of them. After reading the battle report in detail, Prezhan muttered to himself to the military map in the room. It seems that I need to fill in the loophole now. Prezhan needed to solve the hidden dangers left by Army Group South's surprise capture of Diva by the 1st and 19th Divisions of the Guard. This hidden danger is the good news brought by the 1st and 19th Divisions of the Guards. They took Dua and made themselves aggressive. Now, as long as the Austro-Hungarian military reacts, it will immediately overwhelm the territory, and 3 Austro-Hungarian divisions will soon arrive in Diva Point according to the current transport speed of the army. The Southern Army will fall into the tactics of adding oil, which is a taboo in the military point, because Diva is too important. Now Pleshan can only think of a rapid increase in troops to make up the gap with Austria-Hungary. Prezhan called his secretary and ordered, "Go to the traffic department to find Director Tours, and say I have something to call him." The Romanian general staff, with a strong German style, of course, has the same traffic department as its German counterparts. Moreover, they all have the same function, that is, in order to ensure the transportation of troops during wartime, they take over the main transportation capacity of the country, so Tours, as its director, has a lot of influence in it. Therefore, even Pleshan rarely treats his subordinate in a commanding tone. There is a very interesting little episode here, that is, the director of Tours was not born in the military, and did not go to military school at all. The authoritative person who is now responsible for the transfer of the Romanian team is from Ploiesti University, and he still majored in mathematics before. But there is a little thing related to transportation. He has a father who is engaged in transportation. While helping his father, he wrote an article on the changes brought by new transportation. In it, plans are made for the existing motor transport, but also for the improvement of rail and ship transport. This article fell into the eyes of Admiral Pleshan. The Chief of General Staff is very sensitive to the transportation of the army, so after consulting Tours, the transportation management talent who has not attended the military school for a day was specially recruited to the transportation department. In the transportation department, Tours quickly stood out and made several all-inclusive transportation plans, which made Prezhan very satisfied. Therefore, in order to exert the greatest ability of this transportation management talent before the outbreak of the war, Prezhan helped him to the position of director, and this Tours did not live up to his expectations, and managed the transportation department in an orderly manner. "Admiral, are you looking for me?" Prezhan was not asked to wait, and Tours appeared in front of him after a while. Looking at Colonel Tours, who was wearing a scholar's breath in front of him, Prezhan smiled and cared. "How is your traffic department working now?" Facing the concern of the Chief of Staff, Tours, who was a little confused, answered truthfully, "Thank you for your concern. The transportation department is now operating normally, and everything is proceeding in an orderly manner according to the plan. That's good." Prezhan said first, and then said it immediately. "I have a task that you need to do right now." As soon as Tours heard that there was a task, or a task, that needed to be done immediately, he subconsciously asked, "What mission?" In the face of Tours' inquiry, Prezhan said his request directly. "Now I need you to immediately increase the transport capacity for Army Group South, and I need you to transport Army Group South to Diva within a week." In the face of Pleshan's request, Tours said after thinking for a while, "Our transportation department can do this, but the price is that the reserve force needs to be delayed by a day to complete the assembly, and the advancement of the Central Army will be affected, and the Bulgarian campaign will be delayed for about 5 days to complete the preparation." Tours is indeed a genius in logistics and transportation, and he immediately gave the impact. Prezhan said, after walking in the office and thinking for a while, "It's acceptable for the reserve to be 1 day late, and I can also accept that the Central Army's attack speed is slowed down, but the Bulgarian campaign was delayed for 5 days, which is too long. Can we not delay it? It's a pity that Pleshan's wishes were in vain." And Tours directly shattered the expectations of the Chief of Staff. "This is not possible. I can shorten the time by up to 1 day by going back. Because your request must use half of our trains, we have no other way. This is the result of my plan to collect a large number of civilian ships for transportation." In the face of Tours' words, Prezhan thought again and again, but still felt that he needed to keep his advantage in Transylvania first, then do it. After sending Tours away again, Prezhan looked at the military map in his room and pointed to Diva and said to himself, "You two have disrupted my battle plan. If you lose Diva, you will go to me as a sailor. Let the 2 army generals be sailors." It seems that Diva has a place in the heart of Admiral Pleshan. Chapter 312 Do a Defense Battle 1. Dua's importance cannot be doubted in being able to arouse the anger of the Admiral Pilation Point on the same day. The news of the Romanians' capture of Deva also spread within the Allied powers. Among them, Romania's request to start the Battle of Thessaloniki as soon as possible to contain Bulgaria's request was also reached. In view of Romania's astonishing combat effectiveness in the past few days of the war, Britain and France also negotiated the matter. Both sides expressed their willingness to speed up the preparations before the war, and they could not let their allies face the surrounding alliance *** teams alone. The United States, as the new big three of the Allied powers, expressed its willingness to do its bit for pre-war supplies, while the Allies offered various rewards for Romania's capture of Deva. It was also criticized within the Allies after the Bulgarian King Ferdinand I heard the news. He said to his confidant in surprise, "God, the Austro-Hungarian army is so fragile. Fortunately they fought Transylvania. If Romania came from behind us first, I guess we have nowhere to go, except defeat Point in Vienna." The news that Deva fell into the hands of Romania also made Carolai angry. He completely ignored the image of the monarch and cursed at his brother-in-law, King Edel of Romania. "This hellish villain, shameless liar, they took Deva from us. This is unforgivable, and now our 9th Army is not ready." Facing the wrath of Emperor Carolai, Friedrich explained it openly. Now they are not ready, the weapons and ammunition are still lacking, and the personnel have not been replenished. However, Archduke Friedrich's explanation did not make the young emperor feel better, and he gestured with 3 fingers. "Tell the 9th Army that I will only give them 3 days, and once the 3 days are up, they must immediately set off to reinforce Transylvania Point." After speaking of reinforcement, Carly said with a disgusted expression on his face, "Send a telegram to Lieutenant General Sam and ask him what's going on and when the 10th Army will be able to counterattack and retake Deva Point." Kerr was justifiably angry about the 10th Army's unbearable performance in the Romanians' offensive. In the face of the attack of 3 Romanian divisions in the past few days, the poor performance of the 8 divisions of the 10th Army under Sam's command made Carol wonder if this was still the commander who performed well on the Eastern Front and trusted him. In the face of the Emperor's anger towards Sam, Archduke Friedrich, who had been maintaining the relationship between the Habsburgs and the army, did not want to persuade Carolai anymore, because even he felt that Lieutenant General Sam, who was in command of the 10th Army, had behaved very poorly and did not play the role of a commander at all. However, although he was very dissatisfied with Lieutenant General Sam's performance during this period, Carolai still knew the importance, and he would not do such a thing as a general replacement. It just depends on the performance of the Lieutenant General. If the table is so unbearable, then replacing the commander to reduce losses is also under consideration. It was just that Archduke Friedrich, as the Minister of War, felt that he still needed to do something, so he said to the Emperor, "Your Majesty, I think we should send a telegram to the 10th Army to reprimand them, at least so that they can know the attitude of the Empire." Archduke Friedrich's words made Carol feel reasonable. He was not suitable to replace the commander because of the war situation, but he couldn't let them betray his trust in vain. So he said to the Archduke, "That's a good suggestion." After speaking, Carolai looked at Archduke Friedrich and said, "If we continue to ask Germany for reinforcement to help us push back the Romanians in Transylvania, what do you think of this proposal?" In the face of the Emperor's inquiry, the Grand Duke said it again and again after deliberation. "Your Majesty, is it too hasty for us to request German support now?" Karl understood what the Archduke meant. It has only been less than a week since the Romanians declared war. If Austria-Hungary asked Germany for help twice, it would be too self-respecting. Moreover, if the army gets the news, it will be considered that it is not trusted by the Emperor and its morale will drop, so it will not be worth a loss. After persuading Emperor Carolai, a telegram of rebuke was sent from Vienna to the headquarters of the 10th Army. General, this is a telegram from Vienna. In the command headquarters on the outskirts of Cluj, a staff officer carefully placed the rebuke telegram drafted by Archduke Friedrich in front of Lieutenant General Sam. He knew that the lieutenant general was not in a good mood recently, so it would be better for him not to provoke him, but the telegram from Vienna in his hand became a hot potato. Let me see, what did Vienna send me? Lieutenant General Sam borrowed the telegram to read it, but unexpectedly, the lieutenant general didn't seem to care too much about it, and there was no ups and downs in his face, which made the secretly observing staff members only leave in confusion. Looking at the rebuke telegram sent from Vienna in his hand, Lieutenant General Sam was not angry. It was impossible. But as a soldier, especially a senior officer, he couldn't be angry, because it was indeed his dereliction of duty to lose Diva this time. Here he also had to admit that the Romanians did impress him. Compared with the Russians he encountered on the Eastern Front, the Romanians were less rude and more rigorous and bold. Take this operation in Diva as an example. As a soldier with many years of experience in the army, Lieutenant General Sam believes that he still has no problem in command. At the beginning, he was rated to take Ploiesti by taking advantage of the time difference between the declaration of war and the sneak attack, and he immediately arranged for 5 divisions to approach. No one can say that he has dealt with mistakes if he does not talk about the results and only talks about the process. But the Romanians, taking advantage of their well-trained weapons, forced their forces to the limit and broke through the defenders of the 2 Dua divisions. Take advantage of rail transport to grab a division and block 3 flanking divisions. Then, taking advantage of the time difference, he grabbed Diva before reinforcement from his 3 divisions arrived. This series of operations fully demonstrated the opponent's superb commanding art, making his opponent also applaud him. But now his shortcomings are also exposed, that is, the lack of troops in a short period of time. Although the other side can get a steady stream of reinforcement through the railway, there are limits, and he will use the force far beyond the opponent's limit to crush the opponent with the momentum of Mount A. This is a gift he prepared for the opponent, and this is also a conspiracy. Just then an officer knocked on the door and came in. Your Excellency Lieutenant General, the generals have all arrived. Okay, I know. Chapter 313 Do a defense battle, 2. At a time when Lieutenant General Sam's ambition is to take Diva in one fell swoop and defeat what now appears to be a formidable enemy on the southern front, Diva is already at war. The 3 Austrian-Hungarian divisions, who were only 12 hours later than the 1st Division of the Guard in the 19th Division, launched an offensive on Diva as soon as they arrived, intending to retake this strategic point. This made the Romanian officers and soldiers who had just captured this place too late to breathe. Felt enormous pressure. Inside the hastily built trenches, Captain Mizik, who was so dirty that he could not see that he was wearing a military uniform with a beard, shouted, mentally exhausted. Bombardment, dodge. Immediately after finishing speaking, he crawled and rolled to an anti-gun position that had just been repaired and hid. Then the other soldiers of the 7th Company nearby also hid in the same embarrassed posture. A group of people listened to the sound of the rumbling cannons and endured the torment in silence with the mud shaking off their heads. Someone couldn't help but say, "Damn, why didn't our artillery fire back?" Then a voice explained, "Maybe there are other plans up there." Soldiers complained about the lack of artillery support, and Mizik knew why. The main reason was that the artillery ammunition in Hartseg was too high, and the loss on the battlefield was not small. So after taking Diva, in the face of the military power of the 3 Austrian-Hungarian divisions, their artillery was at an absolute disadvantage. Since you are at a disadvantage, you must be aware of your disadvantage. Therefore, when the Austro-Hungarian artillery ravaged his soldiers, he could only endure it and vent his anger when the artillery counterattack was most needed. How long do we need to defend, Commander? This sentence immediately brought Mizkra into the topic, and he opened his mouth, who also endured the torment of the shelling. This question requires you to ask our teacher, Your Excellency, in person. Mizk's words enlivened the atmosphere when someone interjected, "Talk, maybe the teacher will like you, and maybe he will leave you in the division." This made the soldiers who were enduring the shelling burst into laughter and relieved their tense spirit. Only Mizik knows that their defense will not be too short, because their commander Delson told him alone, because there is a threat of 3 Austrian-Hungarian divisions in Ploiesti, so the next goal will be mainly to repel the enemy, to protect their back path. As for the dilemma faced by Diva, they can only focus on defending the Austrian-Hungarian offensive, so it is destined that they need to fight hard before the threat of Petrocini is relieved. It was hard to endure the shelling when the observation post left behind shouted, "The enemy is coming." Mizik roared, "It's our turn." After he finished speaking, he bent down and rushed out. The soldiers of the 7th Company rushed to the position immediately under the leadership of the company commander. Next, they will fight with the enemy on the battlefield to fight for their own survival. Behind the position, a group of senior officers was watching Romanian soldiers fighting for their lives. A general with a telescope on his shoulder and a star on his shoulder spoke. "Now the Austro-Hungarian army is on the offensive, and our grassroots officers and soldiers are under a lot of pressure." Another general with the rank of lieutenant general answered casually, "It can still be defended, but the casualties are a little bigger." As he spoke, he put down the action of raising the telescope, which was Lieutenant General Ankada, the commander of the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard. As the main hero of the raid on Diva, Ankada can now be called a spring breeze. Because 3 hours ago, Ankada had just been appointed as the commander of Diva City Defense, commanding all Romanian troops in Diva City. Of course, he was not the only one who received the award. Major General Dotreid also won the post of deputy commander. Ankada was very satisfied with this confession, because it was not just as simple as commanding the 1st and 19th Divisions of the Imperial Guard, but also meant that the continuous reinforcement would all fight under his command. This would be his seniority, and he became the first general of the same rank to coordinate and command multiple divisions in this war. As long as this battle can be fought well, then everything will have a bright future. Of course, this position is not so simple. The position of city defense commander will also mean that he cannot lose the city. He is very clear about the meaning of a city defense commander who loses the city. So he was extremely cautious in this battle. Due to his ignorance of the newly occupied city and the distrust of the local residents, he set up defensive positions outside the city, leaving only one regiment in the city to maintain law and order. For now, his decision seemed wise, as there was a commotion in the city with the arrival of the Austro-Hungarian army. In response to this situation, Ankada immediately declared martial law, prohibiting random walks on the streets, and severely dealt with a group of people who did not obey orders, and the situation was alleviated. This also made his heart palpitate. Fortunately, he did not covet the convenience of the city's defense, and made the decision to resist the Austro-Hungarian army in the city. In the current situation, if defending in the city, this will give the attacking Austro-Hungarian army a home field advantage, and the pressure on their own defense will increase. Seeing that the defensive front is not too dangerous, Lieutenant General Ankada said, after handing the telescope to the staff next to him, "Let's go back now. At present, it seems that the consumption of weapons and ammunition is too high, and more preparations are needed." So a group of officers left the observation post. Just when they returned to the headquarters, a staff officer who stayed behind stepped forward to report. "Report, Lieutenant General, the first reinforcement have arrived at the train station, along with the ammunition we urgently need. This is the detailed information sent from Tagiriu." Ankada took the telegram from the staff officer and checked it carefully. It turned out that the Southern Army had already taken into account their difficulties in the telegram, so they concentrated 5 trains to rush to transport reinforcement and ammunition materials for them. This time the reinforcement are not much, just 1 regiment, and it is also an elite regiment from the very capable 2nd Division, and the rest are urgently needed weapons and ammunition. There are more than 6 million rounds of infantry machine guns and 30,000 rounds of artillery shells, which can alleviate their plight of lack of ammunition. There are also some supplementary field telephones, raincoats, tents, gas masks and other inconspicuous but indispensable military supplies. After reading these material lists, Ankada immediately made arrangements for reinforcement. Let the new 2nd Division Infantry Regiment be temporarily repaired, and wait for the order. "Yes, I'll send the order right now." A communications staff officer immediately took note, and turned around to convey the order. "Wait a moment." Lieutenant General Ankada stopped the staff officer, and continued to speak. "Also hand out the ammunition, and call Colonel Matitsi. Let him do a harassing counterattack. Tell the guns to be safe, and don't run out of mine." "Yes, General." I'm going to give orders after the staff officer who conveyed his order left. Lieutenant General Ankada was planning to discuss future counterattacks with his deputy, Major General Dotrud. At this time, a staff officer broke in directly with a telegram. Before Ankada had time to ask, the staff officer told them a surprising news. Chapter 314 Do a Defense Battle. 3. What did you say? The news the staff told was so shocking that it made both generals stand up. This is a telegram from the general staff. After receiving the telegram from the staff officer, Ankada immediately checked it. This was a telegram personally sent by the chief of the general staff, Admiral Ploiesti, in which a message was described in detail. That is the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army defending Transylvania, provoked by you, and intending to take advantage of the interior line operations to first recapture Diva, and then repel the offensive of the Southern Army. And as a certificate to retake Diva, and repel Army Group South. As commander of the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army, Lieutenant General Sam assembled 8 divisions for this purpose. Adding the affiliated troops, this is 140,000 troops, and adding the troops that have already fought against them, this is 250,000 troops according to the plan previously formulated. The Southern Army will be equipped with a total of 15 divisions, with a strength of up to 240,000. However, it should be noted that this is the configuration after the formation of the second batch of mobilization troops. In other words, it will be available at least a month later, but now the Southern Group Army has only 5 standing staff, and there are 3 reserve divisions that have just been formed by the militia, plus other troops attached to the Group Army. The total strength is only 120,000 people. And the most important thing is that half of the troops of the Southern Army are still in the country. The intelligence indicated that Lieutenant General Sam would not give them much time, and his 10th Army mobile force was gathering. According to the analysis of the general staff, they have only 1 week to prepare, and then they will face the situation of overwhelming troops. The 2 Dua city defense commanders and deputy commanders were in a terrible mood. When they saw this telegram, Major General Dotrud couldn't bear to complain. Damn it, why is the situation so bad? Listening to the complaints of Major General Dotrud and his partner for the time being, Lieutenant General Ankada advised instead. Look at it, maybe this is also our opportunity. Hearing Ankada's words, Dotrud asked rhetorically, opportunity? So please tell me, what is this opportunity? We are about to be besieged by at least 10 divisions within a week, and Admiral, Commander, Salamik can only be sent to defend at most 5 divisions. The task is very arduous, and there are still 3 divisions that are constantly draining our energy, which gives us no chance to even complete the fortifications. You know what the outcome of a defensive battle without complete fortifications will be. In the face of Major General Dotrud's question, Ankada could only say it with a wry smile. It is indeed difficult, but we are not without opportunities, but the price is higher. The words of the Lieutenant General made Dotrud very curious, so he asked, how much does it cost? It is estimated that everyone in Dua will not like us. Ankada's hint was obvious, and Dotrud immediately guessed what he was thinking. Are you going to fight scorched earth? In the face of Major General Dotrud's question, Ankada immediately admitted, yes, this is the only way I can think of at the moment. We have too much pressure on the defense, and can only use the houses in the city as a defensive fulcrum point. So you're going to kick all the Diva residents out? Yes, this is for their consideration. Ankada's straightforward words made Dotrud feel a little emotional. It looks like the 2 of us are going to be the most hated people in Diva. So you should be on it. Hahaha, it's a real honor. While the 2 commanders of Diva were having fun, General Salamik, the commander of Army Group South, who had just arrived in Targariu, was equally unhappy. However, the reason for the general's bad mood, in addition to the upcoming counterattack of the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army, was the 2 city defense commanders in Diva. The general's mood is also understandable. If it is replaced by his subordinates who act alone without reporting, they will feel the same as him. It's just that your excellency Admiral's heart is more bad, because their buckets are bigger and their battle plan has been completely changed. As a commander who has been serving in the army since the establishment of Romania, because he did not obey the order and changed the target without permission, the whole plan was completely disrupted, and there should not be too many examples of failure. Therefore, The general was dissatisfied with these two thorn-headed generals for a long time, but because the importance of duo was too high, the two escaped punishment. However, the bad result of the two men's changes in the battle plan came, which accelerated the progress of the Southern Army, and did not cooperate with the other two armies at all. This allows the defending Austro-Hungarian army to find an opportunity. Now the Southern Army will face the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army alone. Where are the 35th, 38th, and 39th Divisions now? His Excellency the Admiral, who had just arrived in Târgu, ignored his exhaustion and immediately asked his Chief of Staff. We just got the news that the 35th Division has just boarded the train in Giuligiu. And it is expected that all members will arrive here the day after tomorrow. The 38th Division is currently on the march, so they will arrive at Târgu in 3 days. As for the 39th, the division has just been assembled and is still waiting for the transportation department to arrange a train to transport it. As the Chief of Staff of the Southern Army, in the face of the Admiral's inquiry, he immediately informed him of the current situation. The answer from his Chief of Staff made Admiral Salomik frown, and it seemed that Admiral was a little dissatisfied with it. Why hasn't the 39th Division confirmed train transportation yet? Isn't it our priority to protect us? In the face of the Admiral's question, the Chief of Staff explained. The reply from the Department of Communications is that the 39th Division currently does not have enough capacity because our ammunition and artillery take up too much transport to the wagon. As the Commander-in-Chief of the Army, General Salomik has always paid attention to the superiority of firepower, which he complained to his Chief of Staff. These are all excuses for the traffic department. We are at an absolute disadvantage in numbers, and we can't fight this battle if we are equipped with a disadvantage. This is not acceptable. After complaining, the Admiral spoke his way. Let the 39th Division carry only light weapons and march towards Târgu in a marching posture. As for the heavy equipment of their division, let the traffic department find a way to arrange wagon transportation. So they can't make excuses. Admiral Salomik's method, but the traffic station is set in midair. You said that the capacity is not enough, so I don't need you to transport people, just transport equipment. In the face of the Admiral's rogue approach, the Chief of Staff said, "Okay, I'll do it right now." Watching his Chief of Staff leave, Admiral Salomik also rushed to the Army headquarters temporarily set up at the railway station. There is not much time left for him. He still needs to watch over the coordination of the various divisions of the army, and the competition around Diva also needs his attention. It seems that tonight will be another sleepless night. Chapter 315, Do a Defense Battle 4. The Carpathian Mountains are covered in snow, and the cold winter winds silence everything. However, during this time, the road from Baku to Ryak was full of people. The roar of cars and the neighing of war horses made the place seem very lively. Lieutenant General Farid, who was in command of Army Group North, was marching with the army with his own headquarters. Farid, who was sitting in a car with his Chief of Staff, Major General Jaquesto, sighed while looking at the scenery of the winter mountains. The Carpathian Mountains in winter have a different flavor, but I don't know if we can speed up our pace. Major General Jaquesto, who understood his partner's mind, said with a smile, "Commander, we don't have a railway, we can only rely on our own marching speed." Hearing the words of his Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Farid changed his seat and said, "You are right, I really hope that all my soldiers can march in cars. In this way, it is entirely possible for me to attack this target in one fell swoop before the Ryak defenders have reacted, but unfortunately the car in my hand is too large." In order to accentuate his rhetoric, Lieutenant General Farid made a gesture, as if there were many cars in front of him. In the face of his partner's remarks, Major General Jaquesto did not answer. Because there are quite a few cars belonging to the North Army, there are more than 3,000 cars in 8 motor transport regiments serving it. The biggest factor restricting the rapid transport of Army Group North was the poor road conditions on the muddy roads in the mountains. Thousands of cars are tossing back and forth. You don't expect to be able to drive much faster. Sometimes you don't have as much time to ride as to push the cart. Therefore, most cars are currently used for transportation, heavy equipment such as artillery, military supplies such as ammunition, and military supplies. While the two army generals were chatting, a notification brought them back to reality. Lieutenant General, here is a telegram from the General Staff. A staff officer riding a motorcycle handed the telegram in his hand to His Excellency Lieutenant General. Lieutenant General Ferret reached out and took the telegram to check it, and his expression became more and more serious as he read the telegram. Looking at his partner's increasingly serious expression, Major General Jax asked with concern, "What's the matter? What is the message from the General Staff? Look at it." Fried handed the telegram he had read to his Chief of Staff. The Chief of Staff, who took over the telegram, quickly looked at the contents. His expression was the same as that of Ferret. Slowly. Fried couldn't help but speak. "I knew that Ankara's early capture of Diva would disrupt the whole plan. But I didn't expect the Chief of Staff to be so daring. This plan is amazing." After reading the telegram, Major General Jaquesto, who was still shaking in his heart, agreed with it. "It's really amazing, and our Chief of Staff has a big appetite. But if we can follow his plan, then we'll get enough money to take Transylvania in one fell swoop." The new battle plan that shocked the two was based on the fact that the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army was going to concentrate its forces to attack the Southern Army. The key to this was that the South Army held the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army, and then the Center Army merged with the North Army to attack the newly reinforced Austro-Hungarian 9th Army to capture the regional capital of Cluj and then drive it out of Transylvania. The rest of the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army would be alone and would be driven out of Transylvania by the combined force of the three armies. The whole plan feels unrealistic, and the use of troops is also squeezed to the limit, but the profits are also very rich. This will free up troops in advance for the defense of the Moldavia region to be attacked, and it will also allow the Bulgarian campaign to start early, and also remove the threat in one direction. Fried was not as optimistic as his Chief of Staff thought, and he pointed out two hidden dangers. "It's tempting to plan, but there are 2 points that need to be struck." He stretched out a finger and gestured. "First, Army Group South will face the main force of the 10th Austro-Hungarian Army alone. According to the original plan, it was shared by our three armies, but now it needs to face it alone. And I remember that the mobilization division originally attached to Army Group South. Now, there are still a lot of them that have not been formed. Even if the only mobile forces are allocated to them now, there is still a huge gap between them and the 10th Austro-Hungarian Army. So I'm afraid that the Southern Army will not be able to withstand it." After listening to Friet's analysis, Jax nodded. "This is what I'm also worried about, and the risks are indeed not small." Lieutenant General Friet also said that he was worried about the second point. "My second point of concern, according to the new plan of the Chief of the General Staff, when the South Army was attacked by the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army, we in the Center Army needed to quickly advance to capture the regional capital of Cluj. According to the staff, provided information that the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army will reinforce Transylvania. The intelligence shows that this is an army of up to 200,000 people, and the enemy also has the advantage of railways, which means that the opponent has sufficient supplies and has no worries. Our supply line needs to cross the muddy roads of the Carpathian Mountains. People are worried. Also, to deal with the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army, we need to concentrate two armies, and the current progress of the Central Army still has some gaps." Having said this, Ferret stopped, and Major General Jax knew that what he did not say was that Army Group Center might have delayed the date. Distrust of friendly troops is a taboo in the military, which makes Ferret, who is a high-ranking member of the military, able to say it. Knowing that Ferret was worried, Jax could only persuade him from the other side. The Chief of the General Staff has sent the plan, indicating that it has been approved, and now we can only try to make up for the hidden dangers. Friet knew that this was for the Chief of Staff's own good. After all, there were only possible hidden dangers, and he needed to make every effort to ensure that the Northern Army was ready according to the planned time. Letting go of his worries, Friet told his Chief of Staff, "You're right, we need to do our best first." After he finished speaking, he looked out the window and asked the communications staff member who followed him on a motorcycle, "How far is the Stryker 7th Division from Rajak now?" The communications staff report arrives. Lieutenant General reports that the 7th Division is still 25 kilometers away from Ryak. According to its advance investigation, a brigade of the enemy's defenders is building fortifications. Tell the 7th Division and tell them to take Ryak in one go. The enemy of a brigade is not a problem for them. Yes, Lieutenant General. Watching the departure of the communications staff member, Felite turned back and spoke to Jax. Tomorrow we should rest in Ryak. Both sides in the battle around Diva have fallen, and now it's up to who is better. Chapter 316 Do a defense battle. 5. Both sides are preparing for this. The train from Targiriu to Diva has never been interrupted, and the Southern Army used the time to rush to transport supplies and troops. And in northern and prominent central Transylvania, Romanian troops were desperately attacking. For this reason, Lieutenant General Sam Kluge gave orders to the defenders in both directions to try their best to delay the enemy in both directions. For this reason, the Austro-Hungarian defenders in both directions kept harassing the Romanian troops on both sides by destroying road settings, blocking, and sneaking attacks, which made them very annoying. However, what Lieutenant General Sam valued most was to stop repairing the 9th Army that came from Budapest. After 3 days of waiting, Lieutenant General Sam personally greeted the arrival of the advanced troop of the 9th Army at the railway station because its commander, Lieutenant General Carl Versten, also arrived. Play music. Lieutenant General Van Sitting stopped the train steadily on the platform. The military band belonging to the 10th Army played cheerful music. Lieutenant General Sam was wearing a lieutenant general's dress waiting for his arrival at the station. During the music, Lieutenant General Van Sitting walked off train. Seeing the arrival of the main lord, Lieutenant General Sam walked over enthusiastically with a smile on his face. Long time no see, Van Sitting. Yeah, long time no see, Sam. I heard that after I was transferred to Kluge, you performed very well on the Russian front, and even His Majesty the Emperor praised you. I just got lucky when it happened. Today I held a welcome reception for you. I invited many gentlemen and celebrities here to attend. I will take my car for a while and let us catch up with each other. When the two of them were asking questions, other people who followed Lieutenant General Van Sitting walked out of the train station with the help of Lieutenant General Sam. A long queue of receptionists lined up outside the train station waiting for their arrival, and the two army commanders got into a car as the convoy started. A group of people left the train station, and the two lieutenant generals sitting in a car naturally shifted from small talk to the current war situation. Sam, I know from the battle report that you are not ideal for fighting the Romanians. Can you tell me about the characteristics of these Romanian troops, so that I can be prepared? In the face of Lieutenant General Van Sitting's question, Lieutenant General Sam, who was sitting next to him, flashed a gloomy expression. The battle is not ideal is what Lieutenant General Van Sitting has already said very euphemistically. In fact, it is terrible. As a direct party, how could he not know? And about the characteristics of the Romanian army, this is the report of the division commander that his subordinates have fought against, but considering that the current situation is basically defeated, Lieutenant General Sam has made some changes to this. For example, the introduction of the Romanian army by Major General ARZ of the 35th Division made him anxious. Look at what he wrote. The Romanian army is very good at raiding. Its basic officers are very high quality, and even after suffering high casualties, they can still launch an effective attack. Moreover, in its division level firepower, the configuration of artillery and machine guns is extremely high. Finally, it is concluded that one Romanian division can withstand the attack of two Austro-Hungarian divisions. This kind of report, which at first glance has been defeated by the Romanians, is completely useless, Lieutenant General Sam said to Van Sitting, based on the characteristics of the summary of multiple reports. As for the characteristics of the Romanian army, according to my understanding, its basic tactical unit is the division. At the division level, their artillery and machine gun configuration is higher, so the firepower is much higher than our division level troops, and because Romania has maintained a standing military system for a long time, its soldiers and officers are much higher than ours in tactical combat skills, so we do not have an advantage in basic organization. Lieutenant General Sam explained here. In many previous battles, our battalion company was generally not its opponent. At this time, it was basically relying on the superiority of troops to repel it. Lieutenant General Sam's words made Lieutenant General Van Sten feel a little uncomfortable. He didn't expect the Romanian to be so difficult, so he couldn't help asking at this time. Don't they have any weaknesses? In the face of Van Sten's question, Lieutenant General Sam said hesitantly, it's not impossible. At present, it seems that they have fewer heavy artillery pieces and have higher requirements for supplies. Also, we have the advantage of terrain, and the number of their troops is small. Facing Lieutenant General Sam's answer, Lieutenant General Van Sitten said with a smile, thank you for your explanation, which allows me to understand the next opponent better. However, in Lieutenant General Van Sitten's heart, he was a little confused about this. Because of the characteristics that Lieutenant General Sam said he was very familiar with, except that there were fewer heavy artillery. Isn't this the norm for the German army fighting side by side with him on the Eastern Front? Sam applied the characteristics of the German army to the Romanian, which made him wonder if Sam was confused by his opponent. Of course, his doubts can't be expressed, but what Lieutenant General Sam said needs to find a chance to play against the Romanians, and Sam was completely unaware of his description of the Romanian army, which made his colleagues feel like he was exaggerating. The group rushed to the 10th Army headquarters on the eastern outskirts of the city, where there were enough houses for the 9th Army to settle down. In the Cluj City Hall that night, Lieutenant General Sam invited celebrities and held a welcome dinner for Lieutenant General Versten and other senior officers of the 9th Army. The rich food such as caviar, veal steak, Bordeaux wine and so on made the guests of honor very satisfied. According to the usual practice, Lieutenant General Van Sitten made a generous speech in defense of the local area, which also won him warm applause. Thank you so much for your warm hospitality. Lieutenant General Van Sitten, who was returned to his seat after the speech, saw Lieutenant General Sam rush over and thank him. You're welcome. I want to tell you something when I come here, Sam said, looking at Lieutenant General Van Sitten in front of him. What's up? In the face of Van Sitten's question, Sam glanced at no one around and said it. Tomorrow I plan to lead the army south. In such a hurry, Van Sitten was still a little surprised by Lieutenant General Sam's decision. It was too hasty. Facing Versten's surprise, Sam explained, I can't give the Romanians too much time to prepare. If it weren't for the need to wait for you to take over the defense of Cluj, I would have set off with my army. Lieutenant General Sam's words made Van Sitten feel the pressure. He and Sam's status were almost the same, and he understood that this was all caused by the previous bad situation. It now appears that only defeating Romania will bring Sam back to life. Van Sitten, who understood what his colleagues needed in front of him, patted his shoulder and said, then I wish you victory this time. Thanks. Early the next morning, Lieutenant General Sam took the assembled 8 divisions to Dua, and this time he would wash his humiliation with the blood of the enemy. The actions of the 10th Army immediately attracted great attention from the Romanian side. At noon that day, the telegram about the 10th Army's massing of troops and marching towards Diva was placed on the desk of General Salamic, commander of the Southern Army, who had just arrived in Diva. Now, around Diva, Romania and Austria-Hungary are about to start a battle. Chapter 317 Do a Defense Battle 6. The Dorsal River, which originates in the Carpathian Mountains, winds its way down through Diva and joins the Danube in the west. This allows Diva to have a gentle valley terrain, and a railway from Romania has made Diva an important traffic point. Specialties such as honey, wheat, apples and wine from Transylvania have also made this city a prosperous trading city. The mountains on the north and south sides of the city can provide the defender with a good advantage, but the terrain of the east and west river valleys will make them worry a lot. In general, Dua has advantages and disadvantages in defense. The mighty Austro-Hungarian 10th Army finally arrived in the suburbs of Diva after 4 days of marching. Now Admiral Salamic is on Mount Colt in the north of the city, watching the Austro-Hungarian army. The number of the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army is really large this time. Admiral Salamic put down the telescope in his hand and sighed. The chief of staff, who also put down the telescope, voiced another concern. and the intelligence shows that they carried a lot of heavy artillery, many of which are 20 heavy artillery. We only have a 50 heavy artillery regiment, and this battle will be difficult. After speaking, the two of them looked at the maroon red mud wall behind them, and the live logs on the roof were still exposed to build field fortifications. Such fortifications are difficult to survive under the heavy artillery of Austria-Hungary, and the two commanders are also worried about this, but all of this is a matter of lack of troops. Only 5 days earlier, General Salomik had led 3 divisions to repel the 3 Austro-Hungarian attacking divisions at Sibiu at Petrosini. Then 3 days ago, facing reinforcement from the menacing army of the south, the 3 Austro-Hungarian divisions attacking Diva retreated. However, although the Austro-Hungarian army had retreated, it caused huge casualties to the defending 1st Division and 19th Division of the Guard. Among them, the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard has now suffered more than half of the casualties, and the 19th Division is even worse. At present, the troops that can continue to fight are only enough to form a brigade. This made Admiral Salomik, who came with the reinforcement, almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. Now that he has disabled 2 divisions, the next battle will be even more difficult. Fortunately, the country had already anticipated this situation, and the mobilized troops for it had already been delivered to Targariu. After 2 days of transportation, the 2 divisions were finally filled yesterday. Although the combat effectiveness is vastly different from before, who made the entire army group lack strength now, and can only let these mobilized soldiers learn on the battlefield. In addition to that, Admiral Salomik needs to worry about one more thing, and that is his relationship with the residents of Diva. Previously, the 1st and 19th Guard divisions had carried out scorched earth operations in order to defend against the attack of the Austro-Hungarian mixed team, which turned half of Diva's houses into ruins. In addition, in order to clean up the law and order, he also used severe methods, which made the relationship between the people of Dua and the army extremely poor. And after Admiral Salomik arrived at Diva, feeling that this is not the way to go, so the newly released compensation method for damaged houses was posted on the streets. In this compensation announcement, Admiral Salomik decided that for houses damaged during the war due to the fighting of the Romanian army, a subsidy will be given to the owner of the house, and the specific amount is 80% of the value of the house. This announcement greatly reduced the hostility of the residents of Diva to the Romanian army. At least he would not spit at the soldiers in the back. After observing the Austro-Hungarian army, Admiral Salomik immediately rushed back to Diva's headquarters, where he would assign defensive tasks to several of his subordinate division commanders. After returning to the headquarters, Admiral Salomik, who had been in his office to observe the combat map, was reminded by the chief of staff, who pushed in the door. "They've all arrived. Can we start?" "Okay, I'll go right now." After finishing speaking, the admiral sorted out his military appearance and strode into the conference room. "Your Excellency is here." Following the announcement from the herald, the division commanders sitting in their seats immediately stood up, and Salomik led the chief of staff to their respective seats. Looking at the twinkling subordinates, the admiral waved and said, "All sit down." After everyone was seated, Admiral Salomik spoke up as usual. "You all know the importance of this meeting, so I won't repeat it. Now let the chief of staff assign you your respective tasks. If there are any problems, you may wait until the assignment is complete. Do you understand?" Faced with the admiral's question, the teachers who were sitting all answered in unison. Understood. Admiral Salomik was very satisfied with everyone's answers, and he turned to the chief of staff and spoke. "Let's start." The chief of staff, who received the order, picked up a baton and walked to the wall facing everyone with a battle map and spoke. "Now let's talk about the specific arrangements of the army for this battle of Diva. The first is the most important northern mountain for this operation. In this position called Colt Mountain, our army will send the 5th and 11th divisions, and the only heavy artillery regiment in our hands will also be assigned to you. Major General Fergus will be in charge of the mountains to the north." Hearing this, Major General Fergus, the commander of the 5th division, nodded to everyone, while Ankada and Otrad, who had a rescue friendship with the 5th division, responded with a smile. "And on the eastern river valley we will have the 15th division defending this position." Having said that, the chief of staff named Major General Kledov, the commander of the 15th division. "Your 15th division needs to pay attention. That is, Pay attention to the railway bridge on the Dossel River. It cannot be occupied by the Austro-Hungarian army. This will be related to the safety of the supply line of our southern army. Faced with the roll call, Major General Kledov showed his determination. Please rest assured, Chief of Staff, I will defend the bridge. Then the Chief of Staff continued. We have arranged for the 18th and 35th Divisions to defend the river valley in the west. This is also the second possible breakthrough point for the Austro-Hungarian army. So 2 division commanders, you should be more vigilant and report to the headquarters if there is anything wrong. The same side is in charge of Major General Modek of the 18th Division. The division commanders present were not surprised by the arrangement of the group army headquarters, because the divisions at the beginning of their 30s were all made up of militiamen. Although the previous army minister Kortois and Chief of General Staff Prishan have greatly increased the training intensity of the militia reserve, the training with the standing division is far from enough. This time, there is no way to arrange the newly formed militia division on top, who made the southern army short of troops. Even the other 2 militia divisions, the 38th and 39th Divisions, were arranged in Petrosini to guard the back road, not to mention say something else. The Chief of Staff continued to arrange tasks. Then the 19th Division is defending the mountains to the south, while the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard is left behind in Dua as the army reserve. The division commanders present had no objection to the now severely injured 19th Division defending the mountains to the south, because this is the area that is the least likely to be attacked. Unless the Austro-Hungarian army wants to wipe out the southern army, it is impossible to spend a day's journey to hit here. As for the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard as a reserve team, everyone has no opinion, even if it is also severely damaged, but after all, it is one of the 3 elite divisions. There is a division of the Imperial Guard who can reinforce them, and everyone can feel more at ease. After speaking, the Chief of Staff asked, "Have you heard clearly?" All heard clearly. The same words were shouted out from the mouths of the teachers present. Seeing that everyone was in good spirits, Admiral Salamik tapped on the table and asked, "Who doesn't understand now?" In the face of the Admiral's question, none of the teachers present said a word, and after seeing that no one answered, Salamik continued to speak. "Since everyone has no doubts, let's go to their respective defense areas to prepare." After hearing the Admiral's expulsion order, the division commanders present were preparing to leave. At this time, Admiral Salamik seemed to remember something. "Ankada and Otrad, you 2 stay." Admiral Salamik's words stopped the 2 generals, and the Admiral didn't speak until everyone else had left. "For your supplementary soldiers, take advantage of these few days to step up their integration into the army. You will definitely join in this battle, and hurry up. If you still have any difficulties, you can tell me now." Seeing that the Admiral stayed in order to enhance his combat effectiveness, of course the 2 commanders whose vitality was severely injured could not. "Our artillery and machine guns consumed too much in the previous battle. Can you supply some to us first?" In the face of the request of the Lion to speak out, Admiral Salamik spread his hands and said, "Now the group army doesn't have any extra cannons for you. If you have machine guns, I can only give each of you 15 Markin and 20 Madsen. This is the biggest support of the group army, so don't think about anything else." Facing the addition of Admiral Salamik, the 2 were very satisfied, but they knew that the military expansion in the country had already wiped out all the ordnance they could loot. Moreover, some people suggested whether to take out the bronze cannons used in the previous independence war, but it was rejected by the Chief of the General Staff. In the words of the Chief of Staff, the cost of training artillery personnel is higher than those of the cannons, so don't take any old antiques. Come out and be embarrassed. At the same time, in the headquarters of the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army, Lieutenant General Sam was also arranging the battle plan. "Note that the target of this operation is Colt Mountain. I want you to attack here in turn. I believe that the commander on the opposite side knows the importance of this place to them, and must let him put all his energy here, and Major General Cross's the Heavy Artillery Brigade will help you. According to the information we have, the Romanians have only 1 regiment of 50 heavy artillery." Speaking of which, Lieutenant General Sam said by name, "Major General Stepan, this time you and 3 divisions will go straight into the Eastern Valley as soon as the enemy reserves appear. I want you to take down the railway bridge over the Dorsal River. I want the Romanian army in Eva Defeat. Do you understand? Major General Stepan certainly knew the importance of it. It could be said that the 10th Army was covering for him. If he couldn't get the target, he believed that he also knew the consequences. But the credit is also the biggest, so he mentioned the excitement in his suppression. Understood. This time, with the honor of a soldier, I promise that I will capture the bridge and ensure the smooth progress of the battle plan. Hearing the words of Major General Stepan made Lieutenant General Sam very satisfied, so he spoke. We will start attacking Colt Mountain early tomorrow morning and show our strength to the Romanians. We are not so easy to bully. So after a night of repairs, the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army was ready for battle. At this time, with the order of Lieutenant General Sam, the large caliber heavy artillery from Austria-Hungary made the 5th and 11th Divisions defending the Colt Mountain feel the power. A new phase of the Battle of Eva has arrived. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Target Clutch 1. When the great battle broke out in Eva, the other two armies attacking Transylvania finally captured their respective objectives in the city of Brasov. Army Group Center finally won here. Looking at the ruins revealed everywhere, the army commander Lieutenant General Landru showed a gloomy look in his eyes. Speaking of which, it was these Austro-Hungarian troops who deserved to go to hell who made him show this expression. They fought to the death, took advantage of their familiarity with this place, and resisted so much that they spent too much time on them. Therefore, only when the other two paths have been successful, did he reveal his embarrassment. Of course, because the general staff has allocated their supply and transportation capabilities, it is also one of the reasons to satisfy the Southern Army first. But this cannot be said, because the Northern Army is also affected, but others can successfully complete the task according to the plan. Fortunately, now that he has finally won the target, he can relieve it, but it is still not worth Andrew to ease his emotions. Because in the telegram sent by the general staff, his central army needs to immediately merge with the Northern Army, and the next commander of this super large army is Lieutenant General Friet, the commander of the Northern Army. This made Andrew feel very uncomfortable, knowing that during the Balkan War, he was the commander of the Second Army, and Ferit was only a division commander. It was only after the war that Ferit was appreciated by His Majesty Edda, who was still the crown prince, and his status in the army skyrocketed. Every time Andrew thinks of this, he feels the uncertainty of his fate, but now he must reunite with Ferit. At this time, a communications staff officer came in to report. Your Excellency Commander, a telegram from Army Group North. It seems that Lieutenant General Friet is really eager. Andrew took the telegram, after laughing at himself. However, after getting it in his hands, Andrew was obviously taken aback. This was an encrypted telegram that he needed to unravel in person. Regarding this password, Andrew remembered that it was specially given to the three commanders of the army by the Chief of General Staff before departure, and it was also stated that it was used for sending some important telegrams. Andrew thought he wouldn't use it, but he didn't expect Ferit to use it first. Could something happen? With doubts in his heart, after Andrew sent away the communications staff, he took out the decoding book from the lockbox and began to decrypt word by word. However, as he decoded it, he was surprised by the contents of the telegram, but even his lieutenant general was moved by the generous rewards. Andrew didn't think about it for too long. When the war was over, he didn't have much time to think. So he called the communications staff directly. Record my order now. In the rustling sound of the staff pencil and paper rubbing, Andrew continued to order. Now the entire army has left a brigade to guard the security, except for the 14th Division. Apart from maintaining the logistical supply line, all other troops are ready to set off. Our destination is Sonnet, where Army North is waiting for us. Sonnet, a small town 40 kilometers east of Cluj, was a suitable meeting point for the two armies, just away from the attack of the enemy forces entrenched in Cluj. But the only disadvantage is that it is too far from the central army and needs to hurry up. Sonnet is 208 kilometers from Brasov and 145 kilometers from Odessk, the seat of Army Group North. Facing Lieutenant General Andrews' order, the communications staff answered loudly, "Yes, I'll give the order right now. Point." And many more. Andrew stopped him at this time. "Send a telegram to Army Group North and say it's going according to plan." Point. In the face of his commander's mindless sentence, the communications staff knew that it must have something to do with it, but it was not something he should be concerned about. He just needed to execute it. Point. The radio waves from Army Group Center quickly reached Otosesk, where Army Group North is currently located, and when it was reported that Fleet was studying the terrain of Sonnet on the operational map. Point. When he heard Andrews call back as planned, he put down his pen and gave an order to the staff. "Now I order that Army North, except for the 8th Division, leave a brigade to cover the back road, and the other troops are ready to march immediately. Our destination is Sonnet. Let the comrades in Army Group Central know that our Army North will be waiting there. Bring them to supper." Soon after the order was issued, the North Army began to move towards Sonnet, and the words of Lieutenant General Friet about preparing a late night snack for the Central Army brothers also inadvertently spread throughout the North Army. So this also resulted in the acceleration of the march of Army Group North, which immediately caught the attention of the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army in Cluj. Point. Chief of Staff, this is the latest development of the two Romanian armies. What do you think? After getting the newly detected information just now, Lieutenant General Van Sitten looked at the telegram in his hand and asked his Chief of Staff. Point. In the face of his partner's question, some Chief of Staff who didn't understand had to answer cautiously. "There is some disconnect between the two armies." The answer of his Chief of Staff did not satisfy Van Sitten. He pointed out directly, "It's not a bit out of touch, and it's quite out of touch. The distance between the two armies is 60 kilometers. Do you know what that means?" Before waiting for the Chief of Staff to answer, Lieutenant General Van Sitten said it himself. "This means a distance of 2 days. If we arrange the troops to delay a little bit, this is at least 4 days. This allows us to do a lot of things, such as destroying them individually." Point. Hearing Lieutenant General Van Sitten express his thoughts, the Chief of Staff said immediately, "Are you trying to replicate the Battle of Tannenberg in East Prussia by the German 8th Army?" Lieutenant General Van Sitten admitted generously to the Chief of Staff's inquiry. "What's wrong with that?" The Chief of Staff, who always feels that there are some places that are not clear, said, "It is feasible, but it will draw most of our troops. Will we give the opponent a chance to take advantage of this?" Regarding the Chief of Staff's concerns, Lieutenant General Van Sitten said, "There is some reason to worry about what you said, but it is not feasible at present. Because the distance between the two Romanian armies is very large, this will give us enough time to defeat the enemy's North Army first, and then deal with it separately. The enemy's Army Group Center." Speaking of which, Van Sitten continued, "If you want to win, there is no risk at all." Point. In the end, Lieutenant General Van Sitten made the decision. Because Romania had too many flaws, he had no reason to give up this rare opportunity, and in order to prevent possible accidents, in addition to leaving a division to defend Cluj, he also let the Austro-Hungarian Air Force at any time investigate the movements of the two armies. After doing this, Van Sitten planned to assemble his troops to give the arrogant Romanians a powerful blow and let them know how powerful the Austro-Hungarian army was. Chapter 319 Target Cluj 2. On the 21st of November, Army Group South and 10th Austro-Hungarian Army fought in Eva. 4 days later, on November 25th, the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army intercepted Army Group North near Sonnet, and the two sides immediately launched a major battle. Point. For a time, the battle of hundreds of thousands of people in two places attracted everyone's attention. Of course, as the King of Romania, Edel was also very concerned about this. Not to mention the moment when the current situation of the Romanian army has become very delicate. So at this time, His Excellency the Chief of General Staff, who mainly controls the war situation, was recruited into the palace. Point. My Chief of Staff, how is the war going now? After Pleshin arrived at the palace to say hello, Edel asked directly. Point. In the face of the king's inquiry, he explained it. Your Majesty, the current situation is still within our General Staff's expectations. The reason for this situation is also within our expectations. Edel could only believe the explanation of the Chief of Staff, but he still raised his concerns about this situation. But the casualties of fighting in this way will not be small. What we lose now are the elite soldiers we have trained for many years. I'm afraid that the combat effectiveness of the troops will drop too fast. The main reason is that the elites of President Jiang in World War II suffered heavy casualties at the beginning of the anti-Japanese war, which caused the image of almost collapse later too profound. Therefore, Edel has some concerns about this, and the Romanian army has not yet faced the German army in the east. He is a little afraid that the casualties will be too large and will not be able to withstand the German attack in the next battle. Facing Edel's question, Prezhan certainly knew the reason. The main reason is that the Romanian follow-up mobilization force has not yet followed up, but the standing army on active duty has moved too fast, resulting in a situation where the Romanian army fights more with less in Transylvania. In fact, the deep-seated reason is the military's expression of anxiety about the enemy on all sides, which is also closely related to the Romanian army's combat thinking. Now the mainstream thinking is to defend the enemy outside the country. Of course Romania is no exception, so when making plans, they try to keep the enemy close to the border as much as possible. Romania joined the war and faced the situation of being surrounded by enemies. As a result, the army liked to use its forces to the limit in the execution of operations. This has a lot to do with the lack of domestic forces in the face of more than 3 million troops from Austria-Hungary, over 1 million troops of the German Eastern Front, and 600,000 troops of Bulgaria. Romania currently has only a little over 1 million troops mobilized. If you don't use your troops to the limit, you may not be able to hold it. At that time, Romania's construction achievements of more than 10 years will be destroyed, which will make the army with the sword of the kingdom unacceptable. Therefore, whether it is the staff who made the plan, or the commanders on the front line, they will be used to thinking about using a small amount of troops to achieve the greatest results. However, it seems that the elites trained for many years can still support the plans of the staff and commanders as an executor of the army. Prezhan, of course, also knew these reasons, and he could only tell the truth when confronted with the king's inquiries. Your Majesty, the current solid battle is part of our plan. Hearing what Prezhan said, Edel said it with interest. Go on. The whole plan was like this. At first we planned to assemble the northern and central armies to launch an attack on the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army to capture Cluj. Later we learned that the enemy's 9th Army had 200,000 people, and our two armies joined together. There are only 250,000 people in the rear, and the strength advantage is not large. The enemy is in defensive operations, and there are many fortifications around Cluj. If our elite soldiers capture it, the casualties will not be small. Moreover, Cluj has a railway connecting to Hungary, but not being able to capture it quickly is likely to lead to a war of attrition, which is what we don't want to see. Edel nodded when he heard this, and fought against the 200,000 troops of the Austro-Hungarian army with 250,000 troops. Even if it did not perform well in the Eastern Front, it was not so good to defeat the opponent. Not to mention that there is a railway connection to the rear. Once it can't be taken quickly, the Romanian soldiers can't afford it at all in a war of attrition. After seeing Edel nod in approval, Prezhan continued. Later Lieutenant General Fried came up with a plan. Edel's mind immediately came up with the image of the resolute officer who was taciturn in military meetings. After he was promoted, devoted himself to officer training and other matters. Lieutenant General Fried believes that if we directly join the two armies to attack Cluj in this way, there will be heavy casualties. And if Austria-Hungary has follow-up army reinforcement, it is likely to lead to failure, so he thinks that the enemy needs to be mobilized. So he discussed with Lieutenant General Andrew, and used the North Army he led as a bait, to lure the 9th Army to attack. Then the Central Army took advantage of its emptiness, The Lieutenant General's plan is half done. Prezhan's words. Listening to His Majesty the King's heart is filled with admiration. However, some concerns were pointed out by Edel, who knew a little about military affairs. The Central Army has a huge military strength of 100,000 people. It is impossible for the enemy not to pay close attention. And as long as the enemy notices, it is very possible to send troops to delay the pace of the Central Army and then leave the battle. Edel's analysis, Prezhan explained with a smile. We have already anticipated this, so our response is to have the Central Army deploy elite troops and march to Cluj in a stealthy manner, while the rest of the troops continue to reinforce Sonnet Point. Speaking of which, Prezhan said the latest news. Our intelligence officers in Cluj found that the enemy had only one division left to defend, which shows that our plan was successful. Now we only need to send troops from Army Group Center directly to Cluj, and we can take wherever. The news from Prezhan fills Edel with hope, so he asks, so we shall soon be able to capture Cluj? Edel's words made Prezhan a little embarrassed. There are still a few small issues that need to be resolved at the moment. What is the problem? Yesterday, Lieutenant General Landru sent a telegram that Austro-Hungarian planes were reconnaissance over them every day, which made him unable to make a move to divide his troops for the time being. Prezhan's words made Edel a little anxious. Didn't you think of a solution? Prezhan opened his mouth to answer. We are going to send planes right away to get rid of these Austro-Hungarian flies, but the frontline airports aren't ready yet. Prezhan's words caught Edel's attention. What caused the airport to be unavailable? The field airport runway and fuel are ready. Mainly aircraft parts and maintenance ground crews are still on the way. Hearing the question that annoyed Prezhan, Edel thought of a solution for the future. It is completely possible to let the plane take it directly, with 2 fighters sitting and bombers rushing over with accessories first. We need to ensure that there are no Austrian-Hungarian eyes in the sky. Edel's suggestion. After Pleshan returned to the general staff, he immediately arranged for the waiting 3rd Wing of Romanian Army Aviation to implement Edel's suggestion. As a result, hundreds of planes were immediately brought on the ground and accessories for transfer, and the field airport that had received the order immediately arranged for these planes to stop. When the Austro-Hungarian plane came to reconnaissance the next day, it was immediately intercepted and expelled by the Romanian fleet. After a disproportionate exchange of fire, the Romanian fighters firmly controlled the sky. Next, we need to see the performance of the Central Army. Chapter 320 Target Cluj 3. When there was no Austro-Hungarian reconnaissance in the sky, Andrew immediately prepared to divide his troops. Now they have reached Sovatar, which is only 53 kilometers away from Army Group North at the Battle of Sonnet, and can be reached in a day's rapid march. However, according to the intelligence, 38 kilometers ahead of them, 3 divisions of the 9th Army were already waiting here. As the commander-in-chief of the Central Army, Andrew is also quite decisive. At this time, he himself led the elite 2nd and 9th divisions to sneak day and night, while the chief of staff continued to move towards Sonnet with other troops. In order to ensure realistic confusion to the enemy, the speed of the troops led by the chief of staff should be accelerated, and it is necessary to show the psychology of eagerly rescuing teammates at a fork in Sovatar. Andrew was saying goodbye to his chief of staff. Chief of staff, how many enemy troops do you think we can leave behind this time? In the face of Lieutenant General Andrew, who showed his arrogance. The chief of staff thought about it seriously. It depends on the opponent's response. If Lieutenant General Van Sitten reacts sharply, abandons heavy weapons such as artillery armored vehicles, and retreats from the northwest road, then he can take away most of the army. But in this case, his 9th Army will also be an army that has lost most of its weapons, and lost heavy weapons such as artillery. Does it still have combat effectiveness? Of course, if he's slow to react for a day, or has unrealistic thoughts, then he's lucky to be able to take away a 3rd point. Regarding his chief of staff's attitude of really seriously analyzing it, Andrew said with a laugh. It depends on how much troops we want him to take away. Andrew and the chief of staff were talking about the enemy's defeat like no one else, which made people feel a little arrogant. However, in the eyes of them, who have been battle hardened and experienced, the failure of the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army was inevitable. Because after this battle started, the enemy commander, Van Sitten, performed quite unbearably, and was completely played by Lieutenant General Friet at the command level. And in order to let him put in more troops, Felix deliberately gave up some positions yesterday, and his performance was going to be overwhelmed. Sure enough, it was like taking out a piece of red cloth, making Versten go crazy about it like a bull. He not only invested most of the troops in his hands, but also deployed a brigade of troops in Cluj. This made it impossible for the already stretched defenders to block the next raid, so the two had confidence in the next battle point. If the enemy is like the Austro-Hungarian 10th Army, then this will be difficult to fight. Pointers said. Army Group South did have a hard time fighting in Diva Point in the trenches, through the gunpowder smoke that filled the front of the position. Captain Mizik saw the appearance of many figures and immediately shouted, "Attention, the enemy is coming up. Prepare to fight." Point hearing the roar of his superior, the soldiers of the 7th Company immediately raised their guns and aimed at these figures. They were waiting for the enemy to get closer to be able to kill more effectively. As their commander, Mizik did not look at the distance of the enemy as before and prepared to issue an order to fire, and began to inspect whether the soldiers in the trenches raised their guns in a standardized manner. In fact, the result of Mizik's inspection before the battle is that there are too many recruits in his company. And it's not just his company's situation. The entire 19th Division is like this. When it comes to fighting, it's hard to trust a comrade who's only seen each other for a weak point. Because of Mizik's 7th Company's reputation, he participated in the battles of the 19th Division, and most of them were used in key positions. This also led to the arrival of the reinforcement of the army led by Admiral Salamik. Only 53 people could stand in the 7th Company, and 2/3 of the casualties caused a large influx of recruits. As a commander who is deeply loved by the soldiers, of course he must take care of these recruits, and in Mizik's view, trying to keep them alive is the greatest care. Point after the arrival of the recruits, their company commanders even said in private that the soldiers who had been added to their company were probably the worst in the battle. As soon as they arrived in the army, they encountered a major battle, and some even felt that half of these recruits were lucky to survive the first battle. Now Mizik can only let them take up arms to defend their lives. Somi, stand up. The enemy is coming. Point halfway through, Mizik saw a supplementary recruit shivering in a corner, and a Mosin 98 was dropped in the dirt at the bottom of the trench. Mizik knew him. This was Somi, a new recruit from his own company, a young man who had just graduated from high school in Ploiesti. Point Mizik, who had faced a lot of this situation for a few days, pulled it up and picked up the rifle from the dirt, and he spoke to Somi aloud. Somi, this is a life and death fight. Get over your fears and take a gun to fight. Point Somi, who was pale and still had a nervous expression on his face, grabbed Mizik's shoulder tightly with his hands and said, "They were all dead, so I watched them die, and they were gone. Company commander, are we all going to die?" It seems that Suomi encountered some irritation. It is very likely that a friend he knew was hit by a cannonball in front of him. Mizik has rich experience in healing. I saw that he stretched out his palm and swiped hard at Suomi's tender cheek. Point crack, clap, clap. Point after several slaps in a row, Suomi's mental attention finally turned back to her pain. Ah, it hurts so much. The company commander stopped. Point after seeing Suomi's voice recovering normally, Mizik stopped his hand, not to mention that it was really good to hit the tender face with a rough palm. Mizik, who was thinking about this, looked at Somi, whose face was red and swollen and dodging himself, and then he spoke. Not ready to fight yet. Point cured by Mizik, the fearful recruit from Ploiesti immediately took up his rifle and, like any other soldier, prepared to resist the oncoming enemy. And Mizik treated several soldiers who were afraid. In the next one after another, the machine gun intercepted the follow-up enemy reinforcement, and the other soldiers shot the enemy directly in front of me. Fire quickly. Point DOS, take your men to reinforce our 4th Company on the left flank. They may not be able to carry it. We can't let the gap open from them. Point Messrs, report to the regiment headquarters. We need ammunition replenishment. It's better to give us another machine gun, otherwise it will be difficult for us to fight later under the attack of the Austro-Hungarian army. Mizik was in command of the company's defense in an orderly manner. Under his excellent command, the attack of the Austro-Hungarian army was once again blocked. But looking at the riddled position, Mizik couldn't help but think when he would get reinforcement. In this battle, his company suffered 47 casualties, of which 41 were recruited. Chapter 321 Target Clutch 4. What they didn't know was that not far behind the position where they resisted the attack of the Austro-Hungarian army, the eyes of General Salamik, the commander of Army Group South, were focused on the battlefield. Point the tragic battlefield was indifferent in the eyes of the admiral. His focus was on the integrity of the position. He was very satisfied with the current situation on the battlefield. After putting down the telescope, he asked the commander of the 15th Division, who was in command of the battle here, Kledov, "What else do you need? But first, I won't make up for you if you have a good army. You have already got the 19th Division. A brigade of reinforcement." Considering that the tone was a bit blunt, Admiral Salomik explained in a slow tone. "The enemy is still attacking Colt Mountain, and Major General Fergus has already cried a few times. He said that the enemy's firepower is too heavy, and the heavy artillery regiment is also at risk of being broken through without reinforcement, so I can only let the 1st Division of the Imperial Guard will give priority to reinforcement." Hearing Admiral Salomik's grievances, Major General Kledov certainly couldn't say that he needed reinforcement, so he opened his mouth to speak. "I know that the entire army is short of reinforcement, so give me some ammunition first. There's no problem with this. I'll have someone send you a batch when I get back to the headquarters. As long as you can hold your position, especially on the railway bridge." You need to pay attention to this. In the face of Major General Kledov's request, Admiral Salomik agreed without thinking. In order to prepare for this battle before, he asked for a lot of ammunition from the military department, which is currently enough. Seeing that the general agreed readily, Kledov continued to ask tentatively, "At present, our machine guns and artillery have a large loss. Can you make more for us?" This is, sure enough, Kredov's test made the expedient Admiral His Excellency stuck. After arranging the language, Admiral Salomik told him with a bit of heaviness, "As you know, machine guns and artillery are all conspicuous targets on the battlefield. The situation in Colt Mountain was critical before, and the army's reserves were relatively small, so you can only make reasonable use of the existing resources yourself." Admiral Salomik's words did not disappoint Major General Kledov, because he knew that the army still had a lot of machine guns and artillery in his hands, and would not let it go until the critical moment. Just as Kredov remembers now, there is still a brigade of officers and soldiers of the Guard Division who are firmly in the hands of Admiral Salomik, and will not be released until the last moment. Admiral Salomik rushed over to inspect the position of the 15th Division this time, because the Austro-Hungarian army raided the position of the 15th Division before. Now that I think about it, Major General Kledov still has lingering fears. At that time, Colt Mountain was facing the stormy offensive of the Austro-Hungarian army, which made Major General Fergus, who was in charge of the battle, screaming point. And when all the eyes of Army Group South were focused on Colt Hill, and it was confirmed that Dua had dispatched reinforcement, Major General Stepan, who had been waiting so long, thought that the opportunity had come. Immediately, he took 3 divisions of the Austro-Hungarian army from the hiding place and aggressively pushed straight into the position of the 15th Division. When news of 3 divisions of Austro-Hungarian troops raiding the eastern river valley with the intent to seize the bridge reached the army headquarters, General Salomik was already stunned. He immediately sent the only brigade of the Imperial Guard Division that he had left behind, and also had the 19th Division, which was called Defending the South, which was actually repaired, immediately sent elite troops to reinforce it. However, all these mobilizations take time, and the long-awaited surprise attack by the Austro-Hungarian army certainly will not leave time for the opponent. In the face of the surprise attack of the 3 divisions, Major General Kledov's 15th Division also retreated steadily, and has been retreated to the vicinity of the railway bridge. At this time, 2 armored trains were urgently reinforced to help block the enemy's peak point. Speaking of which, Romanian armored trains will be less valued than aircraft and armored combat vehicles for some reason. If it weren't for the military's strong request, it is estimated that it would not have been funded. But now these 2 armored trains have provided a turnaround for the officers and men of the 15th Division. After a brief repair, the officers and men of the 15th Division immediately took advantage of the armored train to block the enemy's attack. For this reason, Major General Stepan, who was in command of the battle, was furious and launched 8 consecutive attacks in just 3 hours, but all of them were blocked by the officers and soldiers of the 15th Division. When he saw the Romanian reinforcement coming up, Major General Stepan knew that nothing could be done. In addition, his rush to force the soldiers to attack had caused some dissatisfaction in the army, so the Austro-Hungarian army retreated. When the 15th Division brought the reinforcement that came in, to pay for the previous positions. Major General Klidov took a deep breath before he came, and General Salomik took away a brigade of the Guard Division point, and Lieutenant General Sam knew that Major General Stepan's raid failed because of the blocking of the armored train. He just said one sentence. In a hurry, he continued to command the troops to besiege Colt Mountain. This made Major General Stepan feel very ashamed, so after letting the soldiers trim and soothe their emotions, they rushed forward with 3 divisions of the Austro-Hungarian army. General Salomik came to inspect this time to see if the 15th Division plus the 19th Division could block the attack of the Austro-Hungarian army. The current situation seems to be working well, although it was a little difficult to block the enemy's attack at the time. There was no problem. After inspecting the eastern position, Admiral Salomik immediately returned to the army headquarters in Diva City. Now Diva is completely different from before. If any Diva residents come back, they will find themselves unable to find their way home. It's all about Lieutenant General Ankada, because at that time, he and Otrid had driven out the residents of Diva for street fighting. Although Admiral Salomik gave them financial compensation in order to relieve the pressure, considering that the upcoming battle acquiesced to this result, and he also used the past few days to strengthen the fortifications of Dua street fighting, so now Dua can be called a fortress city. In the sturdy building of Diva City Hall, the headquarters of Army Group South was also located here. When Admiral Salomik returned, the Chief of Staff stepped forward and spoke. Major General Fergus called again to complain, saying that the Austro-Hungarian army attacked very fiercely today, and he could hardly stop it at this rate. Salomik took off the dusty military cap on his head and patted his hair to clean it up. One day he doesn't complain. If I give him reinforcement every time, I don't have any reserve team in my hands. How can I fight without a reserve team? Admiral Salomik sat down on the chair and continued to speak. And as you can see now, the troops on all fronts are tight. If we don't save a little bit, how can we hold back the enemy? By the way, hasn't the Air Force seized air supremacy yet? Facing Salomik's question, the Chief of Staff shook his head. The Air Force said that there were too many Austro-Hungarian planes and they couldn't gain air supremacy. The words of the Chief of Staff made Admiral Salomik complain. These Gyrosi are usually so arrogant. Why can't they do it for a long time now? When they need to do things, the Chief of Staff, who knew some inside information, saw His Excellency Admiral's complaint and explained. I can't blame them. The main reason is that the opponents are very strong. From what I know, Austria-Hungary and Transylvania are all veterans who have participated in the Eastern Front. They are no worse than us in terms of technology and aircraft, and we are still in scale 1.5 times as much. Now that the Austro-Hungarian plane has not abused us, you have to thank the boys of the aviation team. Facing the words of the Chief of Staff, Admiral Salomik could only sigh. I know what you said. The enemy's heavy artillery is now a serious problem for our confidence. Admiral Salomik said this to the Chief of Staff for a brief period of silence before they felt the power of the enemy's heavy artillery. In the face of the 210 and 240 heavy artillery of the enemy's heavy artillery brigade, his own 150 heavy artillery is not an opponent at all, and it is completely suppressed throughout the whole process. Forced to be helpless, Admiral Salomik thought of the decision to bomb the enemy's heavy artillery from the sky, but in the face of Austria-Hungary with more planes than himself, Admiral Salomik's last hope was gone. How about we withdraw our troops to fight in the streets of Diva City? Facing the suggestion of the Chief of Staff, Salomik directly refused. That won't work. If we give up Colt Hill and the enemy is condescending, it will be harder for us to fight. Salomik still has a meaning that he has not explained. That is, if he retreats to the defensive fortifications such as houses in Diva City, then the purpose of delaying the enemy will not be achieved at all. When the time comes, the Austro-Hungarian army will come and go as soon as it wants. Wouldn't this make him lose so many troops in vain? He would not do this. After thinking about it, Admiral Salomik can only hold on until the news that Cluj has been captured. Everything will be worth it. So where is Lieutenant General Andrew, who is being talked about by him now? Chapter 322 Target Cluj. 5. Asutu is a quiet and peaceful town 10 kilometers from Cluj, famous for its honey and rose production. Every day when honey and roses are produced, the people in the town transport them to Cluj for sale, and then buy the supplies they need. However, after the outbreak of World War I, life here was tight. Fewer people bought honey and roses, and many good guys in the town were called up for military service. The death notices sent back from time to time cast a veil of sadness on the town, which made Rucoto, the mayor of the town, very sad. The news of the recent war with Romania made the mayor even more sad. But when he was sad for the boys in the town's police officer Kola hurried over. Seeing Kola's eager appearance, Rucoto asked with concern, "Hi, Kola. What's making you so anxious?" Rucoto's question caused Kola to immediately confront him. "Mayor, it would be great if you were here." The tone of Kola's speech gave Rucoto a bad hunch, and sure enough Kola's next words immediately verified his hunch. "Mayor, an officer just informed us that there will be troops passing through our town in a while, and they will be repairing here for a short time. Let us prepare. Any army passing by us." The words of the police officer Carla made the mayor of Rucoto a little strange, because the traffic in the town is not convenient. Except for a road leading to Cluj, there are only unrepaired rural dirt roads leading to several nearby villages. So the army rarely comes here, even if their town is not too far from the city. But since the army was coming, the mayor of Rucoto had no choice but to receive him. Rucoto had already thought about getting the town's residents to boil some water, and some children would be greeted by the roadside with flags. The pretty girls in the town don't come forward, stay at home, and wait for the army to leave before coming forward, and her youngest daughter Lena can only stay at home. Rucoto, who was thinking about the countermeasures, met the officer who came to notify under the leadership of Officer Kola. This is a cavalry officer wearing a blue lapel cavalry uniform, high riding boots on his feet, and an M07 pistol on his golden belt. Through his collar, it can be seen that this is a cavalry officer with the rank of captain. The captains were all sent to notify. It seems that the number of troops in the town this time may be a bit large. I hope they will not bring too much burden to the town. Rucoto, who is well versed in the world, can't help but feel a little worried about this, but when he approached, the mayor of Rucoto immediately showed an expression of lustful relatives. "Hello, sir, I'm Rucoto, the mayor of this town. I don't know how many troops will arrive in our town this time. I want the residents to get ready." In the face of the experienced and worldly mayor of Rucoto, the officer's performance was much inferior. "Mr. Mayor, you can call me Captain Base. This time our cavalry regiment is just passing by. We plan to take a rest and move on. So you don't need to prepare anything. Just let the soldiers have a mouthful of hot water." The words of this Captain Base made Rucoto also sighed in relief. It seems that this time the army is just stopping here to rest, and it only needs hot water in the words, which makes Mayor Rucoto very satisfied. The need for hot water is such a big deal, and the residents will burn a bit after a while. What he is afraid of is that the army will be stationed here, and that is the constant trouble of disputes and headaches. "Captain Dos, I don't know when the troops will arrive. I can have someone ready to welcome you. Mayor Rucoto doesn't need to be so troublesome. We'll just have a rest. In the face of Rucoto's enthusiasm, Captain Dos waved his hand. The time was spent chatting between the two. When Officer Kola came to report that the reception was ready, the chat between the two stopped. "Captain Dos, the army is still here. Why don't we take a break?" While Mayor Rucoto was talking, Captain Dos looked up into the distance and couldn't help laughing. "Isn't this coming?" Captain Dos's words made Mayor Rucoto and Officer Kola turn around to look into the distance and saw a large group of Austro-Hungarian cavalry in blue uniforms marching here from afar. As the Austro-Hungarian cavalry approached, Captain Dos invited him. "Our head is right there. The two of you will go meet with me. Thank you, Captain, for your enthusiasm. Then let's lead the way." When Dos led Mayor Rucoto and Officer Kola towards the cavalry regiment that was about to arrive, Officer Kola, who was a former soldier, looked a little unnatural. Ouch. Seeing that they had already walked in front of these Austro-Hungarian cavalry troops, Officer Kola suddenly covered his stomach and screamed. The unidentified mayor asked the police officer why. "What's the matter with you?" Officer Kola, covering his stomach, said the reason Sudden stomach discomfort. Maybe I ate something bad at lunch. I want to go to the toilet first. Point. Why is this happening? Let's go. Point. Hearing that it was a stomach problem, Rukta waved for him to hurry up. Point. Officer Kohler was like a big switch and immediately planned to go back. But at this time, a big hand firmly grabbed his shoulder, which was the former Captain Doss, and he smiled and said to Officer Kohler, who was a bit dead-faced, "There are already several people with stomach discomfort at this time." Point. Maru Koto looked at everything in front of him and asked with some unknown reasons, "How is this going?" Officer Kohler, who has given up a bit, said it directly. "They are not the Imperial Army, we've all been lied to." Point. Officer Kohler's words made Maru Koto's face turn frosty, and even the civilization stick in his hand fell to the ground. At this time, the Captain Doss immediately said in a deep voice, "Maru Koto, as long as you cooperate with us to reassure the residents of the town not to move around, we will not threaten your life and safety." Point. Facing the naked threats from Captain Doss, Maru Koto immediately recovered his senses. "Okay sir, I will arrange for the people in the town to stay at home. They don't move around, please rest assured." Point. Faced with the threat of the Romanian army, the old mayor of Rukoto had already guessed the situation. These people must have come for the sake of Cluj, and their town was just innocently blocking the road. So now for the sake of the residents of the town and his own safety, of course he can only cooperate. Point. The Captain Doss was very satisfied with the cooperation of Mayor Rukoto. "Now let's get someone to bring you to inform the townspeople and say goodbye again and think about leaving the town." Point. After he finished speaking, he also glanced at Officer Kohler, and the warning meant that only the officer himself knew. Point. Soon the Romanian army was in the town, and the news that everyone was staying at home and not going out ravaged the nerves of the town residents like a hurricane. Some sighed, some were afraid, some were frightened, and many more rejoiced. Of course, these actions can only be done at home. Now that the town is under martial law, these soldiers are in control, but this cannot resist the curiosity of the residents to observe through the windows. As dusk approached, more Romanian soldiers came along the road to the town. From their tired looks and the muddy shoes on their feet, it could be seen that it must have been a long journey. Point. Lieutenant General Andrew was also with the soldiers who arrived in the town. The long march made the old Lieutenant General a little overwhelmed, but he still held a meeting immediately after arriving in the town. Point. Now that we have arrived near Cluj, let's make some repairs. We are going to launch a night attack on Cluj early this morning. I will have breakfast in Cluj tomorrow morning. Point. After speaking, Andrew looked at the generals and officers on the left and right and asked loudly, "Do you understand?" "Understood." Romanian Eagle Chapter 323. Target Cluj. End. Cluj late at night is as enchanting as a quiet beauty. It has the most prosperous night view in the whole of Transylvania, and the brightly lit scene of Tuluman Street is impossible to see elsewhere. Point. Now there are 2 sentries who are stationed outside Cluj, talking about the prosperity of Tuluman Street. Point. Miri, I just visited Tuluman Street the day before yesterday. The night view there is very beautiful. There are many scenes that cannot be seen in other places. One of the 2 sentries was excitedly describing the scene he saw to his comrades. "It was here in the snow that Kaz heard someone stepping on the snow." Point. "Who? Come out." Point. The sound of the sound made the 2 sentries immediately tense up. Point. "It's me." Point. A young officer in a blue uniform with the rank of captain came out with 2 soldiers. "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" Seeing that it was an officer they didn't know, the 2 sentries still performed their duties, but their tone was no longer so stiff. Point. Faced with the questioning of the 2 sentries, the captain officer spoke up. "I'm Captain Doss, the staff officer of the 71st Division. When I came here this time, I wanted to find Lieutenant Colonel Helder, your commander. I'm his younger brother." After finishing speaking, the officer named Doss also took out a small notebook from his pocket and continued to speak. "This is my military ID. You can take a look." Point. The 2 sentries looked at Officer Doss and the soldiers who followed him, and they didn't take any dangerous actions, so they took the officer's certificate and planned to check it. And at this moment, the 3 people who had been harmless before immediately showed their ferocity. Grabbing the 2 by their necks, made them unable to shout, and then a hidden dagger plunged into the sentinel's chest, and soon the 2 sentinels were silent. Point. At this time, the soldier who served as the background spoke up. "Doss, why do you say that you are the brother of the head of the regiment?" said the captain's staff who wiped blood on the sentry's clothes. "I only know the name of the enemy's head, so I can only pretend to be point. But it's not checked point, it's okay. This mission does not require certain success. We only need to go as far as we can point." After the three have done all this, one person took out his flashlight and flashed a few times on the way he came. After a while, a large number of soldiers in Romanian uniforms rushed over. The three of them also continued to touch forward, but this time they were not so lucky, and a secret whistle exposed their whereabouts. Faced with the exposed situation, the Romanian army immediately launched a raid, and gunfire rang out in the capital city of Cluj. Ding, ding, ding. The rapid phone call rang in the city defense headquarters. A staff officer on duty took the call. "Hey, what's the matter?" The staff officer, who heard the content of the call, immediately woke up all the officers in the command. Soon all the officers in the headquarters were busy, and the calls were one after another. At this time, a general with a round body and lack of hair on the top of his head, but sweating profusely, came in a major general's uniform. "How is the situation now?" This person is obviously Major General Lakov, who was left by Lieutenant General Fan sitting to defend Cluj. This Major General is also known for his composure and calmness, but his current situation is somewhat inconsistent. A staff officer who knew the situation best answered the Major General's question. "Now we have received reports that the enemy has attacked the city. There have been many reports in the south and east of the city. They are now asking for reinforcement. What was the scale of the attack? Where was the first attack? And where has the enemy arrived now?" After listening to the answer from the staff officer, Major General Lakov immediately threw three more questions. Obviously, the staff officer was already familiar with the habits of the Major General, and he continued to tell what he had learned. "At present, according to our understanding, the scale of the attack is between 2 to 3 divisions. The first attack was the Meeks barracks in the east of the city. There are military hospitals and other places." The introduction of the staff officer let Lakov know the seriousness of the matter, which made the sweat on his head a little more. But even in such a critical situation, he did not forget his duty as the city defense commander. Send a telegram immediately to His Excellency the Lieutenant General, saying that Cluj has been attacked by about 3 enemy divisions. If there is no reinforcement after dawn, we will not be able to withstand it. Then immediately notify the troops that we can control, and now send the train station and the arsenal build up. We need to defend both places now, or we'll be sinners tonight. Major General Lakov's words caused the officers present to act immediately, and they contacted the troops that could still be contacted by telephone, telegram, manual and other means. "Quick retreat. We retreat backward." An Austro-Hungarian officer commanded his soldiers to retreat to the rear. Company commander, "What about this gun?" an Austro-Hungarian soldier asked, pointing to a short-barreled artillery piece that had just helped them defend. In the face of the soldiers' inquiries, the officer said directly, "Throw it. There is an order from above. Let us retreat to the arsenal for defense, and there will be cannons you can't use up by then." The officer watched his soldiers retreat and said in a low voice, pointing to a soldier who almost poured something on the side to alert the enemy, "Be careful, don't let the Romanians on the opposite side find out, or none of us will be able to leave." This retreat was generally smooth, except for the last accidental photo that made a noise. Everything else was perfect. No, the enemy has escaped. Only after realizing it did the Romanian soldiers realize that the enemy was fleeing. The process of the Austro-Hungarian army disengaging from the battle was not very smooth, because the lower level officers saw that the Austro-Hungarian army who kept retreating would immediately pursue and report their actions to Lieutenant General Andrew, who was in command of the attack. Lieutenant General Andrew, who was in a good mood because of the successful night attack, immediately understood the enemy's intentions. The enemy wants to retreat to the main point. You can't give them the opportunity to immediately entangle them. You can't let the enemy retreat like this. With the order of the Lieutenant General, the Romanian army immediately entangled the retreating Austro-Hungarian soldiers. This made the Austro-Hungarian soldiers who were on the retreat mission very uncomfortable, and could only keep the entanglement of manpower sniping the Romanian army. Therefore, in the exchange of fire between the two sides, the casualties of the Austro-Hungarian army became very large, and Major General Lakov, who arrived at the railway station first to organize the defense, could only gather 3,000 or 4,000 troops. In the end, Major General Korff was very depressed. You must know that before the attack, the entire Cluj had a force of over 10,000 troops. It was only that little left in less than one night. What did he do to block the next Romanian offensive? Romanian Eagle Chapter 324 Occupation of Cluj. When the news of the Romanian army attacking Cluj arrived at the 9th Army headquarters in Sonnet, Lieutenant General Versten was stunned. The Army Chief of Staff, who broke into his room with a telegram, saw that this was not the way to go, and immediately said loudly in his ear, "Major General Lakov needs reinforcement. We cannot afford to lose Cluj. We cannot afford such consequences." The Chief of Staff's words made Lieutenant General Van Sitting think back to normal, but in the face of the Chief of Staff's question, he closed his eyes and returned to his senses, and then said calmly, "Now we first understand the current situation in Cluj, and then decide to send reinforcement." Seeing that his partner had recovered, the Chief of Staff did not urge him, because he knew that the situation had become extremely difficult because of the attack on Cluj, and it could even be said that it had turned abruptly. Now a good helmsman is needed to lead the 9th Army to avoid this storm. Obviously, only Lieutenant General Van Sitting has such an ability. Therefore, the Chief of Staff told the Lieutenant General the information sent by Cluj, and after speaking, the Chief of Staff did not urge to wait for the Lieutenant General's decision. Lieutenant General Van Sitting said, after thinking for a while, "Now we know too little information. Major General Lakov needs to send another telegram. I'll go to the communications office with you to wait for news. You haven't changed your clothes yet." Lieutenant General Van Sitting, who was still wearing pajamas, waved his hand and said, "Where am I in the mood to change my clothes now? I'll go to understand the situation first." Looking at Lieutenant General Van Sitting, who hurriedly walked out of his room, the Chief of Staff could only ask an officer to put on the Lieutenant General's clothes. After all, the pajamas were too obvious. When the Chief of Staff arrived at the communications office, the Lieutenant General was already asking the communications staff to send a telegram. Now, we need to wait for a while to learn about the current situation in Cluj. Lieutenant General Van Sitting, who was sitting and waiting, opened his mouth to tell his Chief of Staff his plans. However, the general swept the eyes of the sender from time to time, and we could know that he was not as calm as he had shown. There is news. Before Van Sitting and the Chief of Staff waited long, a communications officer said what they wanted to hear. "Receive it immediately." The communications officer, who was also waiting on the side, immediately ordered. As the radio waves were gradually converted into words, a telegram from Cluj appeared before them. Lieutenant General Versten took over the latest telegram from Cluj, but the content of the telegram made him look very ugly. The Chief of Staff glanced at it and saw that the message sent on the telegram was that most of Cluj had now fallen into the hands of the enemy, and only a few data points such as the railway station arsenal were still in the hands of the Austro-Hungarian army. Lieutenant General Van Sitting, who couldn't bear the news, scolded, "Damn it, how did Lakov become a major general? How could he have lost Cluj before midnight?" In fact, most of the responsibility for this issue needs to be borne by the Lieutenant General himself. In fact, Van Sitting himself understands that greed blinded him and made himself make the decision to destroy Cluj, but now it is time for him to take measures to restore it. What should we do now? Should we send troops back from the front line? The Chief of Staff's words reminded Van Sitting that he will need to respond. Even if it is wrong, it is better than inaction. Facing the urging of the Chief of Staff and the waiting of many officers in the battle hall, Van Sitting was also under heavy pressure because his own decision was related to the life and death of the 9th Army. Just when he was having a hard time making a decision, Van Sitting suddenly had other ideas when he looked at the dense markings on the combat map. Now send a message to the 11th, 41st, 64th, and 78th Divisions, and ask them to assemble their troops and withdraw from the front line immediately. In the face of Lieutenant General Van Sitting's decision to withdraw part of the army, the Chief of Staff asked a question. "Are you going to reinforce Major General Lakov at Cluj?" Do not facing the Chief of Staff's question, Lieutenant General Van Sitting directly denied it, and then pointed to a location on the map to preach, "We are not going to reinforce Cluj. Let them defend here, and then we need to retreat." The Chief of Staff looked very ugly when he looked at the position where Van Sitting pointed. because it is called Derry. It is located in the northwest of Transylvania, and from here, it is the Great Hungarian Plain. It turned out that Lieutenant General van Sitten did not intend to reinforce Cluj, but planned to retreat point in the face of the unexpected decision of His Excellency Lieutenant General. The Chief of Staff said in shock. Van Sitten, you have to think carefully. Van Sitten, who has been his partner for a long time, understands the meaning of the Chief of Staff's words. If he retreats like this, then the biggest responsibility for the failure of this battle must be him. But what can be done about it? As long as Cluj is captured tomorrow, their supply line will be cut off. For the army whose supply line has been cut off, where is there any fighting power at all? And even if the enemy has not attacked, he will be in chaos. So in the face of the Chief of Staff's concern, Van Sitten gave his reasons. I know the consequences of this, but the scale of the enemy attacking Cluj needs to be seen. Lieutenant General Van Sitten said with 3 fingers. The enemy army who attacked Cluj should not be less than 30,000 troops, and in order to retake Cluj, we must send reinforcement of no less than 45,000 troops. If we take into account the urgency of retaking Cluj, then the number of troops will be less than 45,000. It cannot be lower than 60,000, so there is a possibility of retaking it in 3 days. Lieutenant General Van Sitten continued to talk while staring at the Chief of Staff. This is still the most ideal state. I'm considering the judgment made when most of the Cluj fortifications have been destroyed. Now, there are still 2 enemy armies out there, eyeing them. The news of the fall of Cluj cannot be concealed. Do you think Romania will give us 3 days after we have drawn our troops? After hearing Lieutenant General Van Sitten's analysis, the Chief of Staff said something unwilling. If Lieutenant General Sam returns to help, we should have enough troops. In the face of the Chief of Staff's words, Lieutenant General Van Sitten directly criticized. Chief of Staff, your radical ideas are dangerous. Have you considered the consequences if we don't retake Cluj, which will put us and the 10th Army in a desperate situation of destruction? By that time the Hungarian Plain will be in front of the enemy's front. In the future, it will bring the Italian campaign prepared by His Majesty to an end, and it will bring shame to our family. Facing Lieutenant General Van Sitten's words, the Chief of Staff thought about the consequences of angering the young emperor. For this he sighed. It seems that the only choice is to sacrifice the defenders at Cluj. Lieutenant General Van Sitten replied calmly. There is no way to do this. After all, we need to consider the group armies more than 100,000 people. After he finished speaking, he did not forget to mention a sentence. Remember to send a telegram to Major General Lakov, saying that the reinforcement will not arrive until noon. I hope he can hold the key points and wait for our rescue. In this way, the defenders of Cluj were regarded as abandoned sons by Lieutenant General Van Sitten, and Major General Lakov, who received the order, used this telegram to encourage the Austro-Hungarian army to retreat to the main point. The same news also made Lieutenant General Andrew, who was attacking, split half of his troops to defend the reinforcement that could not be reached. But a lie is a lie after all, and the Austro-Hungarian army, which was defending the main points, has been struggling to resist the attack of the Romanians. Waited until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, defending the railway station until Major General Lakov sent his last telegram. We are about to fall. Long live the empire. In the end, Romania only got the body of Major General Lakov, while Lieutenant General Andrew sent a message to the country that Cluj had been captured and the enemy commander was killed in action. PS. Can you subscribe? There are only 100 people reading the book. Is this result too bad? Chapter 325 follow-up. When Lieutenant General Andrew made a surprise attack on Cluj, Lieutenant General Friet, the commander of Army Group North, 4 E's of command, where Army Group North and Army Group Center were combined, was already preparing for the next day's counter-offensive. Looking at the division commanders who were summoned in the middle of the night, Lieutenant General Farit, who didn't know the enemy was going to escape at this moment, was talking about the plan for the next day. We will launch a counter-offensive tomorrow morning. The mission of this counter-offensive is not to let the enemy have the energy to call in troops to return. So we must be entangled with the enemy and cannot let them escape. As long as Lieutenant General Landru captures Cluj, then they will it's a mouse in it in bucket, with no place to hide. Point of course, Major General Lakov's persistence bought a certain amount of time for Lieutenant General Van Sitting's withdrawal. The next day Army North felt wrong when it attacked. Point is the enemy's defense a little too weak. Looking at the summary of the battle report in front of him, Lieutenant General Ferrit was a little puzzled, but he didn't think the problem was a big one. It seems that the troops have been dispatched, and a report has been sent to Lieutenant General Andrew to let him be careful of the enemy's return. After speaking, the Lieutenant General gave another order. Send a message to the troops and let them hold the enemy in front of them. Don't give the enemy a chance to draw troops. Major General Lakov's insistence in Cluj confuses the two Romanian generals, who both thought that the troops dispatched by the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army were returning reinforcement. However, with the passage of time, Lieutenant General Van Sitting's intentions were gradually revealed. What? The enemy didn't show up. The message from Major General Doles, the 2nd Division commander who arranged to defend the enemy reinforcement, shocked Andrew. His first thought was that the enemy bypassed the position of the 2nd Division. Immediately send a telegram to each unit to inquire whether a large-scale enemy force has been detected. But soon all the troops did not find the enemy. It's really strange. Where did the enemy reinforcement go? Lieutenant General Landru was troubled by the delay in the arrival of enemy reinforcement. Could there be some conspiracy? The staff officer in charge of the combat map said something casually. What conspiracy is more important than Cluj? Does the enemy want to see his soldiers besieged? Soldiers besieged. Lieutenant General Andrew, who had been thinking hard, suddenly thought more important than Cluj was the 9th Army itself. No, the enemy wants to escape. Lieutenant General Andrew, who figured it out, immediately ordered. I immediately sent a telegram to Lieutenant General Friet, saying that the enemy reinforcement could not be found on the front line of Cluj, and the Austro-Hungarian 9th Army wanted to flee. The airwaves were soon transferred to Army Group North. Holding the telegram from Lieutenant General Andrew, Ferrit muttered to himself, Lieutenant General Van Sitting, you are so bold, you gave up Cluj directly. He immediately believed Lieutenant General Andrew's judgment. According to the intelligence learned from the attack of the following troops, the enemy took out 4 divisions last night, and now it seems that the enemy is planning to retreat. Lieutenant General Ferrit looked at the location of the enemy's 9th Army on the map, and preached to himself. If you want to go, then you have to leave something as a memory. After speaking, Lieutenant General Friet called the communications staff. Now I order the order of Lieutenant General Friet is revealed in the pen of the communications staff. All the current troops are immediately entangled with the enemy in front of them and cannot be given a chance to break away. November 27th. Friet. Lieutenant General Ferrit's order immediately made the separation of the Austro-Hungarian army much more difficult, and a large number of Romanian troops entangled their opponents and did not give a chance to break away. This forced Lieutenant General Van Sitting to make the painful decision to give up part of the army. However, in the face of Lieutenant General Van Sitting's tail-dangling survival, neither Lieutenant General Friet nor Lieutenant General Landru had much choice. The main thing is that the enemy decided to be decisive, leaving them with less time to make arrangements. The decisiveness of Lieutenant General Van Sitting made it difficult for Lieutenant General Sam of the 10th Army to accept. Damn Van Sitting, it's really damn. Lieutenant General Sam's roar resounded through the entire command, and it also made the officers of the command dare not step forward to persuade His Excellency Lieutenant General to lock themselves in the war room. All this was caused by a telegram that had been torn to shreds. If it can be pieced together, this is a telegram of Lieutenant General Van Sten's decision to abandon Cluj of the 9th Army. In the telegram, Lieutenant General Versten stated his difficulties for giving up Cluj. For Van Sitting's judgment that he was afraid of being destroyed if he could not conquer Luri for a long time. In Lieutenant General Sam's view, these were all excuses, which was caused by Van Sitting's exaggerated assessment of the enemy's strength. Like myself on the battlefield of Eva, I have a new understanding of the Romanian army. These Romanian standing armies are indeed relatively elite and can compete with the German army directly led by the Empire, but their mobilized troops are far less than the troops in other territories of the Empire. In the battle with the enemy's southern army in the past few days, Lieutenant General Sam, with the advantages of troops and artillery, firmly controlled the initiative of the battlefield and tortured this elite Romanian army into misery point. But now he gave up this great situation because of the mistakes of the friendly forces, and Lieutenant General Sam seemed very unwilling. Point crunch at this time, the door of the war room was opened. And the sound of the door opening made Lieutenant General Sam frown. "Didn't I tell you not to come in? Do you think I dare not punish you? It's me. What's wrong with you?" the person who pushed in the door asked, and the familiar voice prevented Lieutenant General Sam from being disturbed by his anger. Lieutenant General Sam, who lit a cigarette to relieve his irritability, asked who was coming. "Didn't you go to inspect the troops below? Why did you come back so quickly?" "I'm going and I won't come back." "Are you planning to go out?" "How come?" "I'm just angry at Fan Sitting's cowardly behavior." "Now I'm normal, Chief of Staff. You don't have to keep staring at me." In the dialogue between the two, the person who came was Lieutenant General Sam's partner, Major General Hans Kerr, the Chief of Staff of the Army. As Major General Hans with a popular German name, he was born into a military aristocratic family in Austria. The good family conditions gave Hans Kohl enough opportunities to display his talents. He successively served as the Royal Guard, the company commander and battalion commander of the 3rd Austrian Infantry Regiment, the combat staff officer, team leader, and deputy director of operations of the General Staff Department. Then the outbreak of the First World War was transferred to the 5th Army as Chief of Staff and Sam's partner, and then the two cooperated tacitly and were transferred to the 10th Army together. Everyone in the army knew that Lieutenant General Sam's anger could only be quelled by Chief of Staff Hans. "Now your anger is out, but we need to think about what to do next." Major General Hans's words calmed Lieutenant General Sam, and it was indeed necessary to consider the next move. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.